Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of GameFace, the flagship show of Sifted Games, coming very soon to a web browser near you. I'm Shane Satterfield.
And I'm your worst nightmare.
Actually, this is Marcus Beer. Hopefully some of you guys remember us. We used to do a show called Invisible Walls on game trailers for many, many years. We have reunited for this show called GameFace, and welcome.
I'm looking for a fuck to give because I am out when it comes to Nintendo. And look,
You've been this way forever, though.
no,
You
always.
just don't. I remember Invisible Walls episodes like
the first 16-bit console
5 years ago when I'd look over during a Nintendo topic and you'd be checking your phone for messages.
It was...
Even if it's higher horsepower, you know, if you're doing a huge open world game, you can do so much more.
See, here's the thing about that. The Wii had the same architecture, basically, as the GameCube, and the same power. A little more juice, but not much.
But you had to work motion controls into everything.
Yeah, which I actually loved. I was glad I ended up playing the Wii version of that game. But here, you know, is this also a harbinger of what we're going to see with the NX? Is the NX going to be similar to power to the Wii U the way the Wii was to the GameCube?
And also, you know, the most prized demographic in the world, those 18 to 34?
18 to 34.
Yeah. Which I'm about to be leaving, thank God. You know?
Then no one will care about you anymore.
Stop fucking around. Stop giving the kids access to these games. Oh, but he's so precocious. Precocious is a fancy word for your child being a little cunt. Stop putting your child into an online environment that they're not mentally equipped to handle.
I mean, it's a shame that it's got to the place where Nintendo's relying on little inarticulate toys to turn a profit.
Physical DLC.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what it is. It's just, instead of a code, you've got a little piece of plastic that holds your DLC on it, which...
But if you want to play the DLC and you can't find the plastic in your shit out of luck.
Yeah, you can't punch a code in and make it work.
So, yeah, I think anybody who discounts Oculus is in for a rude awakening. I think that Morpheus will be interesting. I really have no clue what the HoloLens is. I really don't. It looks like Google Glass after taking some ecstasy. I just don't understand it enough yet.
So the second topic today is Nintendo.
This headline, man, is so great.
What the fuck? What the fuck?
Especially when you made the decision that Nintendo made, where they're like, we're not having a show anymore. Yeah. And that's still...
And you know what? I feel like that's a cop-out. I feel like that's like the guy who takes his ball and goes home because he lost. How's it going, Sifters? Happy Tuesday to you. It is GameFace episode 19, and I am here with the permanent co-host of GameFace, Matt Kyle.
Hello.
Yeah, here we are for a special Monday edition of GameFace. Matt Kyle to my right. He is a busy, busy man these days. He is flying all over the world, all over the place. We had this little buffer period. You just came back from like Sweden, where you had meatballs aplenty, I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah, that's all there was.
That's all
meatballs and pickled herring.
That's all you can buy is meatballs, that's it. The last gen versions for Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 will not come with the campaign.
Wow. That's interesting.
That is insane, by the way.
Does it cost any less?
Yes, it is $10 off.
Oh,
so basically, they've now put a monetary figure on their campaign.
The campaigns are $10.
They're worth
Interesting.
$10. Think about all the time and effort they put into the campaign, and they've ultimately decided it was worth $10. A lot of people are evaluating this game based upon what they expected the game to be, not what they just actually sat down and played. And like one of the editorial policies that I've always had is, whether at GT or wherever, is that if you preview a game, you can't review the game because it creates expectations about the game. And when you review a game, you should go into it without any expectations and just review the game for what it is.
And he's like, I like boobs. And like everyone, even the people I know that like don't want to play sexualized female characters in games, like I respect that.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, like it's like I like boobs. I want my game to have huge boobs in it. That's what I'm here for. And it's just like, yeah, all right, you do you. Thumbs up. You know.
That was only for the people on the stream who
You're
are
gonna fix that. Huh?
Oh, it'll be fixed. Yeah. So only the people who are on the stream will ever know how the first attempt at our new format went. The dude walks over, looks in the hole, and the firework goes off, and it flies up and hits him in the head. He turns and looks at us, and his scalp is pulled all the way to the top of his head.
I mean, I haven't played a Battlefield campaign since Modern Warfare 3, but
Call of Duty campaign.
Yeah. Battlefield. They're all the same.
No, it's all blending together. We got all these shooters.
A lot of shooters in the last couple of
I
weeks.
have been shooting my ass off. We suffered through what it's like to really be a nerd, to be like the outcast, like the person who is different from everybody else for doing this. You're not a nerd anymore if you're playing video games. And I feel like a lot of people say, oh, I'm a nerd, and they assign this like tag to themselves, but they don't really know what it really is. They won't even come into the hallway. They'll sit and like hold cover, and you're like waiting for them to pop out, and next thing you know, some dude comes from the side and like shoots you in the head and kills you. Like, it's completely unpredictable, and I love
the
that
very
about it.
first.
I realize a lot of you guys right now want to like stab me in the eyeball. The community has just been absolutely incredible. Somebody on the site today was talking about how they can't believe it. They've been on the site all this time. They've never seen an argument, and I haven't either. I've never even seen an argument.
It really doesn't. Like everybody, like even if people disagree on things, I've seen it's like, yeah, that's a good point. The long-awaited indie game Owlboy, and the very, very soon-to-be-released NES Classic Edition.
And that's not all, folks. We're going to talk to you about BlizzCon 2016, Skyrim Special Edition, and much, much more. Let's go. I don't even know if on Monday if we even have any people watching the show live. I haven't been able to check the chat since we first launched.
Well, they missed some good stuff. Shane had a burning desire to prove that we do wear pants on the show.
People have been asking for a long time, and yeah, in fact, we do wear pants while we're doing the show. Mike's Q. What type of game would you play that starred Hugh Jackman?
Yeah.
And how many versions of him would be in it? That's a really good question.
So what you're saying is like Kingdom Hearts, but with Hugh Jackman movies.
This is one of the ugliest levels that I've ever seen in video games, by the way.
Where they really where they pushed the HD Rumble thing, but they didn't really have any examples of what it was or why we should care.
Because remember, we were like, why are they concentrating so hard on the Joy-Con? We couldn't figure it out. We're like, what? Why?
Because the only thing they really had to demonstrate it was 1-2 switch, and it was like no one gives a shit about that, and like.
Now we're starting to see the master plan unfold.
Yeah, and then that you can see that the blue skull there. So that is a.
I might get my ass whooped here.
Yeah, now they're all on you. Hey, when I whistle for you and like. Sometimes you cross an ocean to get to me, but then you get hung up on a tiny little fence post. Like, what's that about? And Roach just goes, "Hey, man, nobody's good at everything." So, like, I'm sure there will be. My guess is the beginning of the game is going to send you out on some like crazy, awesome, badass Viking raid, like what you're describing. But then you'll leave. You torch the place. You kill the you loot the stuff, and you kill the people, and you take the things, and you whatever. And one of the things you loot happens to be
an
apple.
First
civilization. Yeah, exactly. It's like that's gonna be that village's like sacred object or something, and you take it, and somebody's like, "Don't take it," and you take it, and the whole place shakes, and like. I swear to God, I don't have any inside info on this game, but I guarantee you. And you sail back, and they'll put the title Assassin's Creed Kingdom up as you sail into the harbor of your home Viking village, and everybody will come out, and you'll do like the slow walk through the whole village back up to the longhouse. Like the kids will run out, and the dog will come out, and your character will pet the dog, so you like your character now because he pets dogs. And you get up to the longhouse, and the chief, who's like probably your dad or your uncle or something, comes out. It's like, what have you brought back? We brought back many things. And then they'll have and they'll find this thing, and it'll like go like, and it'll dissolve somebody important, and then they'll blame you for it, and you have to leave the village and go out into the world and recruit your whole group, and then you'll run into somebody who's like some kind of proto-Assassin's Guild guy, and you'll end up like helping them, and then they'll find out you have one of those artifacts, like, oh, I'm going to stick with you, and then that's how you're going to end up on this whole quest to figure out what the Templars are doing and all this. I mean, I'm right. That's exactly what this fucking game is.
That's how they all play out.
If people in the chat could keep Shane updated on the Penguins.
No.
Yeah.
Only if they win.
Shane doesn't have. I'm the only one that can see the chat right now, so just tell me, and I'll decide whether or not to tell him. It's like, no, you're not up behind cover. You're sliding. You're sliding all the time. You're moving.
Yeah.
It's a platinum game. You got to move. It's like one of the.
They tried to make you play it like it was Gears.
Yeah, and it wasn't.
You saw that for a long time with Japan. They saw the success of Gears of War. They're like, oh, well, we need to make a cover-based something. Dude, blowing farts is an attack. That's not funny anymore. It's like...
And that's all your character can do.
You're right. That's pretty much the whole game.
Like, nobody wants a SimCity game that ends after 8 hours.
That's why I said 15.
Yeah, or 15 or whatever. 15 is still not
It's
very
an extra
long.
7 hours. It's our monitor. So this is so Matt and I can see what's actually going on with the show.
Infinity.
Yeah, yeah, you're gonna go into infinity. Also, what I should have said off the top of the show is we have a new TriCaster TD. His name is Jared, and he has his own space now. He's right inside that window. Maybe you can see his hand sticking up there.
Yeah, it is not a shower.
Yeah, so... Hey everyone, welcome to a very special episode of GameFace here on Sifted Games at Sifted.net. I have my old friend and a great friend, Brandon Jones from Easy Allies is here with us today. It's time for our trailer of the week here on GameFace, episode 174. If you guys have been on Sifted in the last couple days, I can guarantee you know what the trailer of the week is going to be this week. Best name ever.
Champion Canadian swimmer Dick Pound.
His parents, I can't figure out if they were awesome or cruel.
I mean, he doesn't have to go by that. It could be Richard.
Richard, yeah, you're right. He chose to go by Dick Pound.
So Dick Pound said that if the coronavirus concerns become too big, they will cancel the Olympics this year.
I've been so stressed out since E3 that I think I'm about to buy that property and just move to the woods by a lake.
The pack attack where he's like, get ready for the attack.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
Like, this isn't Pactor
Well,
at
he's
all.
told the story about the first Pactor Factor episode
Right.
where they forced him to read off a script and he said, screw you.
Yeah.
If I read off a script, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, you can say whatever you want.
Yep.
I have known of you guys for a long, long time, since I was in middle school. And so, you know, when you meet the people that you grow up with as heroes and, you know...
You might be
guys-
a little kind.
Well,
Heroes, I don't know about that. You might
Well,
want to reserve that for people who are in the military.
well, it's just, I look up to you guys, and to have you not disappoint in any capacity is just
Wait till you get to know me a little better, Mitch.
well, you also are taller in person, a lot taller than I expected.
Funny. I think it's more of just the sentiment of don't go to Boston because you're going to get coronavirus. And I think it's...
I mean, it doesn't matter. Wherever you are, if you're in any kind of urban area, I mean, it's already come through LA, I promise. Like, it's a very contagious disease. So, good luck.
How you hanging in there,
it.
Matt, through quarantine? Are you starting to go crazy yet?
No more than usual. I mean, I'm. Like, it's weird. Like, this is the longest I've ever gone without seeing another human being. Like,
Yeah.
other than like passing people on the street that I don't know or whatever. So like that's starting to grind on me because I am something of an extrovert. But I don't know. Yeah, apparently we got 6 more weeks of this, so at least. So better get used to it.
What's it like being in there by yourself for this show? It's weird being here for me anyway.
It's weird. I'll admit, I'm not hearing voices to my left, and it's a little strange, but we're gonna make it. I mean, it's been, since we sheltered in place, we kind of been in the studio on our own a lot more often, and it's kind of been getting used to, but doing the show like this is really strange.
How good is that game going to look on PS5, my friends?
Yeah, that's why I'm pretty sure I will.
Wow. Whoo! I can't even imagine.
People are calling it like the Switch Pro. People are calling it like, what's the other one? The Super Nintendo Switch? Which of those two do you like better, Matt?
Neither.
Neither? That's snowshoeranchmt.com.
Man, I was so relaxed. I just wanted to pull out my Switch and, you know, play some Paper Mario while I was listening to that because it was just so relaxing. So,
Not at all a canned segue into our first topic of episode 221, which is Paper Mario, the Origami King.
Talk about video games for 3 hours in the middle of this. This is not easy.
It's not easy. I totally get
I
it.
can't wait till we get to talking about the game that's about a horrible authoritarian regime taking over a small country that you then fight against in a guerrilla style.
Oh, man. Also alongside us today, we have Jared, who is at the mothership handling TriCasting duties. What's going on, Jared? How are you, man?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing there? You know?
If you always have a helmet on and you are never to take that helmet off ever, why do you have the mustache?
I don't know.
Because that's uncomfortable.
Because then we'll never see it.
Right.
Yeah.
No one will ever see it. It's just for you.
Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace, episode 290 on Sifted Games at Sifted.net. And not only that, welcome to the final episode
from this studio. You will not see the outdoors anymore when you watch GameFace. But I think we all agree that it's probably still going to make it this year, regardless of the weird messaging that Cory Barlog put out there on 420. All right, let's move on.
Maybe that's where the messaging was.
That might have been the problem.
We're working so hard. Not today.
We were.
But we were. We will be. It's not ready.
That's hilarious.
GameFace is up.
GameFace is up. GameFace is up. Is up.
And
Out.
Out.
Out. Out.
Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace, episode 300. Hope you guys enjoyed that little montage, that look back through 7 years of this show.
The many weights of Matt.
And me. It was funny. I started out so skinny.
You came in tip-top shape.
Yeah, I did, and it went south fast.
It's like William Shatner. Like you can tell what part of a season of Star Trek it is because of how
his weight,
thin or fat he is.
Yeah.
There's no time to work out when you're making a show.
Yeah. It's funny. Like I was looking through all the footage for this, and I start skinny. And then I got big, and then I got skinny again, and then I got big, and that's where I am now. I hope you guys really enjoyed that. It took me a lot of work to put that together. I had to look through so many episodes of GameFace and then scrub through them to find parts that are fun. It was a lot of work to put together that 16-minute. I
like the bit where people were like, "Oh, look at how young they are." I'm like, "We're like 41."
Yeah. It's like it's really not that big of a difference, people. But it was a labor of love. I will say that it was amazing going back and looking at how many times we have changed this show. Just how we present the show. Like I had completely forgotten, Matt, that we used to do the cold open. Where we would stand in front of the wall, and we'd introduce the topics.
And had to jump over a cable.
And we'd run to our seats to sit down before the show started while the open ran. Like, it was crazy. It's crazy how much the show has changed over all the different graphics packages that we use for the show throughout the years. It's crazy. Like, how much we've done in 7 years, and seeing all the different studios that I had to move in and move out of and set up and build a set again, and all the pivots that we've done. I think it made me feel good at the end of it all, because we have accomplished a lot. I mean, first of all, 300 episodes is insane. Yeah. I've never done 300. No, I think I was at 500 episodes of X-Play when I left.
Yeah, that would be
around there, roughly.
And X-Play ended around, was episode 1,326 or something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we got a ways to go before we beat that. But
I've whooped my time on Invisible Walls by a mile.
Oh, in terms of, like, podcasts, weekly podcasts, like, that's a ridiculous number.
It really is. Like, my wife, I mentioned it last night, and it hadn't really sunk in what 300 episodes meant. And she was like, oh, my God, because she had no clue. She's like, you could be on episode 20 for all I know. And I said 300, and it, like, blew her mind. She was like, oh, my gosh. And I was like, you're right. That's pretty insane. Like, we've done 300 episodes of this show.
I remember being on the, coming in to fill in for Marcus the first time was episode 15 or 16 or something, and thinking, like, well, I guess if I do enough of these, I'll probably do as many as Marcus did eventually. So.
Yeah. I did manage to find, like, a lot of the seminal moments. Like, I found the announcement when I announced Matt as the permanent host. There was some serendipity going on as I was sorting through those clips. Like, I was glad that I found a lot of stuff. I didn't find, like, a lot of our, like, heated discussions, and I was running out of time. I wanted to put together, like, a little montage of our...
Yeah, you didn't have the one moment I thought you'd throw in there, which was when we were arguing about No Man's Sky, and I slammed my hands on the table.
Oh, yeah.
I was so tired of it.
I wanted to put together a montage of that stuff, but I couldn't find key words to search for on the episodes to try to find those, and it was just taking too much time already. So, but it's just crazy to think about.
So we don't really think about those much.
After they're over, they're just out of my mind, and I don't like stick a pin in them, so to speak, like I do some of like the real seminal moments from the show. But just seeing a lot of the people, I do regret that I could not find any footage of Sam. Sam was our TriCaster TD for a really long time, and I really wish I could have got him in there, but I think we only showed him on camera like twice, maybe.
Yeah, a couple. He didn't want to be on camera.
He didn't want to be. At the end of E3, I know was one of them, and another one I think was like the last episode before we went to like break over the holidays.
I think there was a camera in there for a time. On the was he ever in the shower?
No,
he left when we were still doing it here.
Yeah. Yep. Unfortunately. By the way, Sam is doing great. If any of you guys were wondering, he went to Boston and he has turned into like a production monster. He ended up getting a job with the Boston Red Sox, which is like a dream job for him.
Yeah.
And he ended up parlaying that. Like last time I talked to him, he's like, man, I have the best work and more work than I could ever manage. He's like, I came out here with a resume from LA, and he's like, everybody just lined up to hire me.
That is true.
Yep.
That is true. The Minnesota Film Festival, which in the end Brian went to and I didn't. But the director, and he's from there, but he said it's a lot of local stuff. It was a lot of like local Minneapolis, but he said that because he was from LA or had come from LA, like he was
the belle of the ball.
He was sort of a big deal. Just because, you know,
he had also come all the way out there.
Yeah,
from LA.
Yeah, and he's from Minneapolis, so it was a homecoming thing for him. But like, like being from there matters when you're looking at like resumes and stuff. Like, you know, someone who, you know, especially local TV or local production stuff is going to see someone who worked professionally in LA. It's like, oh, sure, come on in. So that's good. Like when he left, I was worried that like, will there be any production jobs? Will there be any, you know, because sometimes like that stuff just dries up. And there's nothing you can do about it. Certainly that happened in San Francisco.
Yeah. Well, also, you know, he's fought out in Boston. He's fought through COVID and he stayed employed. So if you guys are wondering, he's doing great, which is great news. That's what we all want to hear. Anyone who works with us, we hope that they go on to do amazing things. But it would have been nice to get a little clip of him in there because he's a good friend. Like, he wasn't just a coworker. Like, we hung tight with him, and he was a good dude. So good to hear that he's doing well, and we do still miss him, and I wish I could have slid him in. I saw it was funny watching you guys on chat, by the way, while this was going. It was hilarious. Like, I totally fooled you guys, in which it was the whole intent. You guys didn't even probably notice. And in fact, let me turn off the audio on this clip, and I'll start running it here again, so you guys can kind of get a look at it. But the open, watch, it transforms from our most recent open into our old open. I don't know if any of you guys even picked up on this, but right there it goes. It changes from our new one to our old one.
I didn't really notice, but there was a moment where I'm like, I haven't seen Scorpion's face in a while.
Yeah, and then we do the same thing I do the same thing at the end. The out transitions from the new out to the old out. But you guys were totally fooled. You guys were like, and then I saw some of you guys like, is this going to be the whole show? Is there going to be a real show? It was pretty funny watching you guys freak out over this.
Especially how fast it was going to the present day. I'm like, well, that's a 15-minute show. So we're going to do a 300 episode. We're just going to do it 10 minutes and you're done.
Yeah.
We're taking the break.
Yeah. But anyway, I just want to say, first of all, thank you guys. The other thing that really hit me preparing for this episode was, one, okay, we got to 300 episodes, but two, like, this was all funded and paid for by our patrons and our subscribers. It's pretty amazing. Like, this is as much your montage as it is ours. This is what you guys invested in and funded through the years at our on-site subscription system and then ultimately at patreon.com/sifted. This is all thanks to you guys. Every location we've had, every piece of equipment that we've had, all that stuff is because of you guys, especially after we were robbed at this studio and they took everything. All those games.
That one thing's like New Zelda in 2016.
Yeah.
No.
All those games behind me were all stolen. Almost all the stuff that you're seeing in these shots was stolen. I lost like all of it, which really sucks. Because some of those games back there were like lots of GameCube games that were sealed GameCube games that are now worth, I don't even want to think about it.
That were probably pawned for like $2.
Oh, yeah, if that. They probably got $50 for like everything at the pawn shop or whatever. It really sucks, but...
Low power NX?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it did bring back some bad memories, like of the robbery and some of the other stuff that's happened along the way to us. That's all a part of the journey for us, or at least it has been for us. I don't
wasn't stolen. The mug's right here.
Yeah, they didn't take the mug, and I still have it, actually. I still use it on the show. Yeah, Don Lionheart, was the mug stolen? It was not. It was one of the few things that was not stolen.
Yeah, weirdly enough, robbers tend to not take the things you put your mouth on.
Yeah, even before COVID, they were smart enough to figure that out.
So if you just lick all your electronics.
Yeah, and they know that you've
They'll
licked
know.
them.
They have a robber sense.
But anyway, I just want to take you guys on a walk down memory lane. There may be some of the people on the stream, some of our patrons that don't even know that whole era existed, Matt, that we had that studio. I haven't really gone back and looked at the numbers to see if people watch the retro episodes of the show. So I don't know if some people are going back and watching like these really old episodes. I doubt it.
Certainly the Patreon lists were a lot of familiar faces.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
most of the people have seen them anyway, I would think, from back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'll be honest, like, that Patreon list hasn't changed all that much in all this time. Sadly, it hasn't really...
What is Ryan Stevens doing these days?
Ryan Stevens is working for... It's a website called, like, Fanbyte or something.
That's right. Yeah.
I can't really figure out, like, they're a gaming website, but, like, they're never... You never hear anything from them, but they're owned by Tencent.
Mm-hmm.
And
so they're fine.
Yeah. Exactly. Like a friend of mine worked with Ryan on this like weird award thing that they did. And my buddy is like, that's what he does. He's a booker basically, and he books people for red carpets and stuff. And Ryan brought him in to help him with that stuff. But otherwise, like, you don't hear much about what Ryan's doing. But he is still employed. He's still working in the games industry. He's still covering games. I think you can find him on Twitter at OtherWhiteTofu if you want to catch up with him and see what he's up to. Great guy. It was awesome to see all the old GT people who came on the show very early and like supported us, which was awesome.
And it was at his birthday party that you mentioned Sifted to me the first time.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. So, wow. What a trip it's been. That's really the best way to describe it. Imran Khan is their main reporter, is what Vincent's saying. I had no idea.
Yeah, I see this. It doesn't register with me that it's Fanbyte.
Yeah, I had no idea that he was working there.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, I remember that now that Vincent says that.
Yeah, but you don't see much from him really. Well, how do you feel, Matt, looking through all that old footage of the show?
It's a long time. Doesn't feel like it, but
it really feels like that.
Yeah, 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things happened.
A lot of things have happened.
The world changed.
There's just so much. Just personally for me, with my dad and my sister, with that horrible accident that happened, getting robbed, and losing everything at our very first studio. How long have we even been around when that happened? Like 5 months or 6 months, maybe?
It wasn't too long. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like,
they moved quick. They got in there real fast. As soon as we got all that equipment in there, I don't know if that was an inside job. If somebody was like, "Hey, there's this office that has a bunch of stuff in it at my building. You might want to."
Car stolen. What E3 did your car get stolen?
That was E3. Was that 2019? I think it was the last one.
Might have been.
Or 2018, one of the others.
18 or 19.
Yeah. That's right. My car was stolen. COVID. It's crazy. All the stuff that's just happened in the last 7 years. It's hard to believe it's been 7 years. Like, it's crazy.
2015 was another world.
It was. It really was another world.
Yeah. Like this show started right before Age of Ultron came out. If we want to put it in Marvel terms.
Yeah. Think about that. That is crazy to think about.
Like Force Awakens hadn't even come out yet.
Yeah.
Like the entire landscape of pop culture media as we know it had not happened.
Yeah. It's all changed since then.
Yep.
Yeah. But again,
I was at the Magic Castle on Friday night, and the main magician guy made jokes about vibranium, Wakanda, and Doctor Strange casting spells, and I'm like, 5-6 years ago, no one would have understood any of this.
Yeah,
like it's amazing how fast that has all turned over.
Yep. So we do have some more special stuff for you guys for episode 300. Next, we're gonna have an interview with Marcus Beer. As you guys know, Marcus was the original co-host for GameFace. He lasted 15 episodes, I think it was, something like that.
Yeah.
Before he bailed. And obviously he was my co-host on Invisible Walls for years and years. And you probably know that he's been going through some tough health issues. 2 tough health issues. He had a massive heart attack like 4 or 5 years ago and was in a coma for a long time. And he survived that. And just as he had bounced back from that, he found out that he had cancer. And so I wanted to catch up with him, see how he's doing. I'm sure you guys are interested in him in what he's doing as well and how he is. It's an emotional interview. At least it was for me. I think it was for him too. The cut down that you're going to watch is like 30 minutes. The full interview is well over an hour. And I am going to publish that for you guys post haste after this show airs. But I wanted to cut it down for this show so it wasn't too long. And you may say that's still long as it is. But I think once you start watching it, you'll understand why it's the length that it is. And when we come back from that, we have another surprise for you guys that I think is going to work, but we're kind of on edge about it right now. We're kind of flying by the seat of our pants doing this. This show is kind of intense from a production perspective. But as usual, we're doing the best that we can here on GameFace. So up next, we have an interview with Marcus Beer, a wide-ranging interview that covers pretty much everything. And I think he talks about some things maybe some of you guys were waiting to hear from him on. I think it's a really good interview, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's check it out. Hey, everyone. Look who I have with me. It's the one, the only Marcus Beer, a.k.a. Annoyed Gamer, a.k.a. Grumpy McGrump, which was the first name. And there is the Annoyed Gamer.
Yeah.
Is that actually from Game Trailers? From like
yeah,
the set
yeah, I
that
robbed it on my last day.
Did you take it or did someone offer it to you?
Actually, Rohan gave it to me.
That's cool. Yeah. Anyway, it is Marcus Beer, one of my great friends from the industry. We have a history that goes back now, man, almost 2 decades, it seems like, maybe longer.
Probably.
Because before you ever were on Invisible Walls and working with us at Game Trailers, you were a PR person who I worked with as a journalist for many years before that.
Yeah.
So we've known each other for a really long time. It's pretty crazy to think back to all the things that we've done together across the years.
We old, man.
We are kind of old. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm 51 now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty amazing. That we've stayed friends all this time and through all these different phases of both of our lives. But most importantly, this is GameFace episode 300. And you were the OG co-host of GameFace. Way back in, Marcus, this is the crazy part to think about. Way back in 2015. You realize that has been 7 years since we did GameFace together.
There's so much that's happened since.
It's insane.
I mean, good grief.
Are you like me, Marcus? And does it feel like the older you get, the faster time goes? Or do you feel different about that? Because to me, it just feels like time just whips by. Like I can't even fathom that it was 7 years ago that we launched GameFace. That's mind-boggling to me.
Honestly, I'm at the stage where we're not really sure I have a concept of time anymore.
Oh, really?
Because it's really surreal, where you want to try and appreciate every moment, but you can't. And for reasons we'll go into shortly. I mean, sometimes I can't remember things. But yeah, I mean, yes. Is it May already? Absolutely. Is it only yesterday I was getting off a plane at Raleigh-Durham International Airport in 1999 to move to this country? Actually does seem a long time ago. Christ, yeah. It's funny. I mean, yes, when you're doing something you enjoy, I suppose it does fly by. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've had some good experiences where stuff just went in a blink of an eye, but I think now I'm certainly more appreciative of it. And I'm more selective on how I spend my time.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, it's fantastic that everything you've been through over the last 7 years, you're still going strong. I mean, you went out on your own, you built Sifted out of nothing. You went through the burglary, which still rankles me.
Yeah.
And then you rebuilt again, and you're still going, and you got Pack, and you got GameFace, and Matt's still with you, I believe.
Yeah.
Mr. Keel.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, everything that you've achieved over the last 7 years. I mean, and let's face it, you're a one-man band most of the time.
It is. Yeah. People don't realize that about Sifted. People, they're always like, hey, why don't you do this? Hey, why don't you do that? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? They don't realize that I do everything.
Yeah.
Everything. Everything that you see coming out of Sifted, it's me. We have one guy who helps with curation to curate the content onto Sifted. Otherwise, I do everything. I don't think people understand that. And that's why time for me flies by, because I don't have time to like turn around. It's like every night when I go to bed, there's 5 things that I'm like, oh, I should have got this done today after working 14 hours. So I think that is why, for me personally, probably time seems to fly by more quickly than for a lot of people. Marcus, what do you remember about the whole transition of GT slowly dying and then being sold to Defy and then eventually closing and then Sifted starting and Easy Allies? What are kind of like, in hindsight, your impressions of that whole kind of transitionary period? And obviously now Brandon Jones just left Easy Allies and has retired from games journalism, maybe with that as using that as a framework. What do you remember about that whole time period?
Well, first of all, I mean, given everything Amanda and Brandon have been through, I mean, I'm so glad to see their little baby's doing so well.
Yep.
And I don't blame him if he's
me either. Not one iota. Yeah, I get it.
Fiscal position to do it, they should, and enjoy their time. I mean, Brandon is he's cut from the same cloth as you. Worked so hard. I mean, for the first 4 years of knowing Brandon, I thought Amanda was his wife was a myth.
No, because you never saw her.
We'd
only see her at like events, like our Christmas party for GT, like stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I am so glad they've had the good news, and we're sending them all the love. But I mean, I left you obviously left GT before me, but I left about a year before the Defy thing. And I'd done it because I was just getting tired of trying to be annoyed every week.
You're like, wait a minute, I'm tired of being pissed off all the time.
Well, no, I was just, it felt like, if I couldn't find something worth talking about, it was cheap. I mean, it was coming out of, it was doing everybody a disservice, doing myself a disservice, but also, it was bullshit for the viewer. And as I've said, I think to you before, I mean, that 2014 period, I was getting bored. It's 2013, 2014. I was getting bored with video games.
Yeah. Well, you tried to do a YouTube thing, but after GT, right? You worked on YouTube for a while.
Yeah, I started my YouTube channel, realized it was way too much effort, because back then they weren't doing Twitch wasn't existing back then, and it was way more tricky. I mean, I knew it was always going to be a toughie, but I just didn't have the passion for it anymore. I really didn't, and it's.
What do you think caused that for you?
Burnout.
Yeah, just too much.
Dude, I've been working in video games since I was 22.
It's been almost 25 years for me too.
So that was, that's 30 years ago for me, but obviously also playing them for about 12 years before that.
Yeah, so I played my whole life. Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm looking at 42 years of being involved and playing video games one way or another. And it just got, it got too much. I mean, and I was only working sort of like part-time. I mean, I was doing the GT stuff, I was doing Invisible Walls and Annoyed Gamer, and then helping out at E3, but I would see Damiani and Blood and Ryan and everybody just putting in these 16, 17-hour days, and then, just leaving exhausted to come back the next day. I mean, E3, everybody was just busting ass.
No, it was more than that even during E3. Yeah.
Well, I mean, E3 was something totally different, but I began to look at it, and I still see it happening. And it's just one of the things I've been saying to people, I think probably for the last 8 years or so, is, it's great if you work in video games and you love video games, but don't make that all you are. Because
how do you feel about that, Marcus? Because let's be honest, if you want to do what I do and what Matt does and what the Easy Allies guys do and what Kind of Funny does, and honestly, if you work on a major gaming website, I think now it's probably not as bad as it was at GT, because we were understaffed. We had 5 guys competing against 30 guys at IGN and GameSpot. So everybody had to just work their butts off to have a chance to compete. But how do you feel about the idea that that's kind of what you have to do to be a part of this space, is give up that 12 to 14 hours a day?
I think it's more of a damning indictment on the state of the country, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think it's ridiculous that anybody has to work more than 8 hours a day for a living wage. And let's face it, Viacom was tighter than a duck's ass, and that's watertight. Budgets were always super tight and super slashed. It was run by idiots at the top level who didn't know what they had, because let's face it, Game Trailers was the first video site. And if they hadn't made monumentally stupid decisions to get GT, you have to use our proprietary viewer and all these.
We can't work with YouTube.
Yeah,
that was the big one. That's really what killed Game Trailers.
I mean, it just goes to show how short-sighted Viacom was as a company, and MTV.
Well, Marcus, I don't know if you remember or not, but like the last 5 years I was there, I was also running Spike.com.
Yeah,
and it was. Most people were like, "Oh, was the website for the TV network," but it wasn't. It was actually a men's blog that I started from scratch, and Spike.com went from like nothing to like 5 million uniques in like 4 months. We were writing lots of top 10 listicles and stuff like that. And they were also very short-sighted there, because the people who worked on the TV side of Spike would get upset because we would write articles that would do double the views of their latest episode of Cole or whatever show that they were running at the time. And we go into these meetings and they're like, wait a minute, why is the top 10 like beautiful actresses getting 5 million views and our full episode of this show that we run on air only got 20,000 views? And they cut the blog, and instead of saying, look, we have something here, and like at least like saying, okay, let's spin this off and let it live and grow, they just killed it. It literally could have been the first BuzzFeed that they could have sold or done whatever they wanted with for hundreds of millions of dollars. But to your point about being short-sighted, and I think people who work in corporate America are probably sitting there right now nodding their head saying, that happened where I work, where someone up above me made some crazy decision that made no sense whatsoever and ended up affecting all these people that I really care about. So
yeah, it comes back to this. I mean, you look at it and find it ironic now that there's Paramount Plus that is, Viacom owned, and is screaming for content. Could you imagine a Game Trailer centric channel on Paramount Plus?
Or how much Game Trailers could buoy Paramount Plus? Because Paramount Plus is, by the way, its biggest content is games related. It's the Halo TV show,
which is awful.
It is awful.
Actually, I'd say
Master Chief had sex this week, by the way.
I would say its biggest content is actually the Star Trek stuff, because Discovery and Picard are.
That Halo is getting all the press. They think it's driving their subs, but it's ironic that they had this huge gaming property that they didn't think was worth anything, and now gaming is floating the boat for their streamings. You're right. You're totally right.
I don't think they even have a clue what Halo is still. I think they just, anybody who's watched the show would be kind of like, what the fuck? And then obviously, when Sifted came along, I was sort of like half in, half out.
Yeah.
And so I was
trying to spur you on.
I know, but it's just one of those things that when it's not there, it's not there. And I wasn't.
Yeah, the timing wasn't good for you, for sure.
I was doing you a disservice. I was doing the Sifted viewers a disservice, the GameFace viewers. And I just didn't want to. I mean, it came to head at that E3. I'm like, I'd rather come to E3 and not see a game, just see people I like. That's all I wanted to do, was see people I liked. And it took a while to get back to that, a very long while. I mean, to be honest with you, that didn't come back until.
Seems like a couple years ago when you started doing your streams, right? On Twitch?
Well, the stream I started about just over 14 months ago, January of last year. Things were going so well, and then my heart decided to go, here you go, pull the rug out of under everything. Yeah. And that's, that put paid to that, and that just took me out of the equation. But going back to that start with Sifted, I mean, I've always been so proud of what you've done. I mean, you built something out of nothing. You've kept it going. You dealt with evolving landscapes. I'm sure it's not easy.
No, it's it's the furthest thing from easy.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure now, because there's also the PR people who came up with us are all off, retired, married, kids, whatever they're doing, or up at a high level. And that means that they've got new people in who are not bad people, but they don't give a shit about the yous and me's of this world.
Yeah, they don't know who I am.
Yeah.
Because they're literally 20 some years old. I started in this industry before they were born. But you're right. Like a lot of our contacts have moved on and they're not working in PR anymore. And it is a challenge now for me to get things like review code. Because people are like, who are you? And all they do is they look at our raw numbers and they're like, oh, well, your numbers, it's kind of hard for us to rationalize sending you some of this stuff. And if I don't have someone who's known me for 20 years to step in and say, oh, no, you need to give Shane code. Yeah. We don't get it. Yeah. They'll just look at the data and be like, sorry, because think about it, Marcus, there are thousands and thousands of YouTube channels that have 200, 300,000 subscribers, and their content to me is really vapid and stupid. But if you're a PR person and you're like, wait a minute, we have this sifted thing and this guy is telling me he's been in the industry for a really long time and that maybe I should know who he is, but I don't. And then we have this other YouTuber who has 300,000 views. I mean, I don't blame him. I mean,
I don't blame him either. But I mean, it comes back to this damning indictment of the state of America, state of the world in particular, where everything that's being consumed. There is, I'm doing, people are doing it for codes, for swag, for whatever, and there's no or very little integrity left. You show me an influencer, I'll show you somebody I want to throw out of a plane at 30,000 feet.
It's hard to trust them. I've get a lot of pushback on this from people who say, oh, you're just the old guy, sit yelling, get off my lawn or whatever. But I don't know. I came up through this industry in editorial departments where I had oversight and I had people watching what I was doing, and making sure I wasn't doing stuff I shouldn't be doing.
And we are the old guys. We admit that, and it is great that there's more diversity. For example, that is fantastic. That is one of the things that the barriers have come down on, and you'll see a lot more diverse streams from people you wouldn't necessarily have seen before, and that is fantastic. But there is a definite lack of accountability. August of last year, I was diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer, which is terminal. Basically, the cancer is in my abdomen, my spine, my lumbar, and my ribs. So that means it's metastasized. So that's where it's like, fatal, you screwed. My urologist said, smoke them if you got them. And that's where it's like, oh, okay. And luckily, I got referred by a former business partner of Shauna's to a guy, Dr. David Agus, over on the west side, very near you, near the old G4 offices, actually.
No, wow.
And yeah, I got referred to him, and he is like one of the world's best oncologists. I mean, he got 200 million from Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle, to build his own clinic.
That is an advantage of living in Los Angeles or a major city, is that you do have access generally to the best medical care.
Yeah, and I went in and he was like, all right, so this is where you're going. Because initially they said to me I had 3 to 6 months.
Wow.
And that is, I mean, considering I'd died technically with a heart attack and I've been in a coma for a week.
And just like a year and a half earlier.
But that hadn't, that was 2017.
Yeah.
So it was 3 or 4 years earlier.
Yeah.
But I hadn't, but that didn't happen to me in my head because I was in a coma. I was out. I don't remember. I was dead for, X amount of time. So, I mean, that happened to somebody else. But then to have somebody say, by the way, it's August now, and you may not make it at Christmas. That's a mind fuck.
I can't even imagine.
So yeah, they did all the tests. They got me on these. It's like you'll do X, Y, and Z, and you will take it religiously. And these are the shots that you have to take. And one shot in your arm, one shot in your butt cheek, and 4 pills a day, which is going to shut off your testosterone supply. By December, my numbers had been down enough, and my bone strengthening treatment was working to such a degree that it was like, okay, we can talk about radiation. Because, so you generally don't get tested for prostate cancer until you're 50.
Yeah.
You should.
They're saying now you're supposed to start at like 45 or whatever. I think they're changing.
45 is on the high end. 40 at the 40, 35 if you've got a history of cancer in your family. If you have a history of any cancer in your family, get tested.
Yeah.
Just to be careful. I mean, everyone's like, oh yeah, finger in the ass, blah blah blah. I mean,
who cares? It's your life.
Yeah. In January, I started the radiation. First of all, 2 blasts on my lumbar because I had a big tumor there that was encroaching on my spinal column.
Mm-hmm.
And then 5 days a week for 4 weeks.
Oh my gosh!
Targeted radiation on the prostate, and some people don't have any problem with it, and some people, it turns out, are a little sensitive to radiation.
Funny how that works.
The treatments have worked, or were working up, and I mean, we've discovered that my testosterone levels have started to creep back up, which is
a bad thing, right?
That's a red flag, yeah. And we knew it was going to happen at some point. We just didn't think it would happen this quick. And I only learned that actually last Friday.
Wow.
So yeah, 3 days ago. So I've got to go in and get more tests done to see if we need to switch to a different medication.
But your numbers now are low. So you said when you started they were at 505. What are they at right now, Mark?
0.00. Actually, no, they can't even track it right now.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, that is great. And that was in the last test 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So, but that's when they noticed also the testosterone spike. The question is, where do you draw the line?
As far as like continuing to have treatment that lowers your quality of life versus enjoying your time and that sort of thing.
I mean, my diet's moved to a mostly plant-based, which is as sexy and tasty as it sounds. And right now I'm in a place where I'm just going to keep on soldiering on. I'm in a much better place than a lot of other people. If I'd have had this at the stage 4, had it been diagnosed say in 2018, the drugs I'm on right now, the life-saving drugs, weren't even approved yet. They hadn't come through.
Wow.
So that's how lucky I am. So
Gotcha.
I'm going to keep on fighting until the day where it's like, you know what, it's time to just enjoy what's left. And the key, and I think my cardiologist and my oncologist have a running bet to see who can keep me alive the longest.
Well, that's a good bet. That's a bet you want people to have.
Yeah, exactly.
Marcus, let's try to transition a little bit into games here. And I have a question I want to ask you that'll be a perfect segue from what we just talked about to just talking about games. And that is, how does having a life-threatening situation like the one that you've literally been living for the last 5 years now, between your heart and the cancer, how does that affect your interest or lack thereof in things like playing video games or watching films? Do they seem insignificant or vapid now? Or do you appreciate them more because you're like, man, I may not be able to play games or these games that who knows how long you're going to be able to play games, and are you trying to get them all in? Like, how does that all work for you?
Oh, it's interesting. After the heart attack, obviously I wasn't doing much at all, but a good friend at Microsoft sent me a 2-year pass for the Xbox gaming service. The
like Game Pass?
Game Pass, yeah, a 2-year pass, which I thought was amazing.
Yeah.
And so I started playing, and exploring more games than I had before, and I started to get back into things because I didn't have anything else to do. I mean, I had my physiotherapy and I had, my other stuff, but when I came out of the hospital after the heart attack, I couldn't even lift a 5-pound bag of potatoes.
Wow.
And it was like that for the best part of 6 months. I mean, you saw me at E3 that year.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, I'd lost weight, which is great.
Oh,
I thoroughly recommend the Coma diet. It's fantastic. But yeah, it's I started to get back into things and bought myself I was predominantly playing PS4 lots then because my Xbox One died. And then I bought myself a brand new PC, a beautiful Alienware that is just a nice desktop behemoth about 18 months ago. and I've been exploring so many games through Games Pass in particular, because they've got so much great stuff. And then at the Epic Game Service with their free games
every week.
But it's amazing. I can drop stuff into my library and catch up with it later, or it's let me have a look at some cool indie games. So yeah, that's how I started to get back into things, started to enjoy it more. I mean, I've always been, an avid TV watcher, and we cut the cord about 6 years ago. But I mean, the game stuff started really, after the heart attack, I really wanted to get back in and started doing stuff and playing a lot. I started playing a lot more games. And I finally got my PS5 just before Christmas of this year.
Congrats. Not an easy thing to do.
Not an easy thing to do. And I mean, I only have a few games. Yeah. I mean, I've just...
So to answer my question, it is actually your interest in games has shot up since you've been going through all this medical stuff.
I mean, I've been picky. I mean, and so, yeah, I mean, that's gotten me into it. And I've been watching a lot more movies, whether they be sort of like classic movies from the 80s or the 90s or movies I've missed. I'm reading a lot more.
Do you not find yourself like bargaining and being like, okay, I can play this game for 20 hours, or I mean, I don't know what you can do with your medical issues, or I could go to Europe and travel around Europe for, it's like, I don't know. I always wonder if I were in the position that you're in, like how I would prioritize my time and what I would want to spend my time doing.
Well, I mean, it would be nice to take a, 6-month sabbatical and then go off to Europe. But you got to remember, I do have stage 4 cancer. I am sleeping a lot. So actually, my wife and I just booked our trip back to see my family in the UK in August.
Oh, that's great. In August, you said?
In August, the start of August. I mean, again, something I had to be saved for because, I'm not working as much as I used to. But we're going to go and we're going to see my family. Last time I saw them was February of 2020 before COVID hit and everything else. And that had been the first time I'd seen them since the heart attack. And since then, in the 11 months following that first visit, I lost one uncle to cancer and another one to heart failure.
Jeez.
So I got to see them and say goodbye. And
Thank
this
God.
is where the mental aspect comes in. I mean, I don't know if this trip home to see my family is going to be my last trip. Because it may well be that I don't get to do it again because of my illness. Or if I get to do it again, it's because somebody else has not survived. And it's tough. That's the mind fuck.
It's hard. And look, your case is more extreme than mine, but I moved 3,000 miles away from my family, and I only go home once, maybe twice a year. And so my father, before he died in the car accident, he had COPD. And so I'd go to visit him at Christmas because my parents are divorced. So I would only really see him once a year. And the last few times I went there, to me, I was like, is this the last time I'm going to see my dad? And my dad was like, this is probably the last time I'm going to see my son. It's the emotions there are just, and then you question, you're like, oh, well, should I move back here? And you talk to your family and they're like, no, you need to do what you're doing. And, don't fuss for me. And then you don't believe them. And there's this whole mental gymnastics that you go through when you've moved a long distance away from the people who truly care about you and love you.
Yeah, it is. And we are both going to get very maudlin and start crying in a minute, I think.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I was already starting to tear up a little bit when you were talking about your family.
You've obviously been through it with the tragedy that hit your family. And obviously I'm always so sorry about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to go back to it, yes, I'm going to go see my family. And one of the things my wife and I have always wanted to do is visit Amsterdam. So we're actually going to take a flight from Cardiff to Amsterdam for a weekend. So
I love Amsterdam. One of the cities I would move to in a heartbeat without question. If I had an opportunity to move there, I would move there. Marcus, how do you feel about gaming now? So we're like 2 years into Generation 9, PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. How do you feel about this generation so far? And how do you feel about it compared to previous generations that you and I have lived through and worked through, in all honesty? How do you see things as being different now compared to how they have been in the past with console generations?
I wouldn't exactly say it's been a shining generation this last gen. I would say, I mean, I've got my PS5 and I do like it. It's not designed to really fit in to any particular size of counter.
Yeah,
or,
that's for sure.
shelf.
Yeah.
I haven't bought an Xbox One X.
How come?
X. I've got a kick-ass Alienware.
Yeah.
Why?
It does kind of make Xbox redundant if you have a good PC.
Which I think that is their plan. I mean, you know, they want people to be able to stream this shit anywhere. And Sony's plan long term as well, because we always know that the consoles have been loss leaders. So yeah, I mean, between the Switch and the PS5, and I mean, I obviously prefer the PS5. I've got a Switch here, and I'm so not a Nintendo gamer anymore.
You never really have been. Let's be honest,
well,
Marcus.
not since about 1993.
Yeah.
Go to 95, Donkey Kong Country.
Yeah.
But when stuff started getting regurgitated, and I discovered, you know, PC games in particular, and you know, everybody's raving about GoldenEye, and I'm like, fuck off. I'm playing much better shooters on the PC back then.
I was like that with Halo. When Halo was a big thing, I'm like, man, you guys have not been playing shooters on PC if you're excited about this game.
Still can't stand Halo. I've tried. I downloaded Halo. Was it 5 was the last one?
Yeah. Well, Halo Infinite.
Infinite, there you go.
Yeah.
And it was just infinitely tedious.
I didn't think it was that bad.
Dude, I started playing the campaign, so I won't play multiplayer anymore because I mean my reaction times aren't exactly what they used to be. I mean, you know, one I'm old, and two, I have look up cancer brain fog. Because that's
I've
actually
about that.
with regards to the meds. I mean, I get a little bit messy. I'm certainly better than I was, but yeah, I mean, I tried playing it and I thought the campaign was just kind of miserable. I think, you know, going back to, for example, Cyberpunk is a much better first-person action game than any of the Halo titles, even with its bugs. I mean, I've been playing Marvel's Guardians. That bores me silly. Unfortunately, it's got the same problems that Avengers have, in that it's using an engine that's nowhere near capable of running a fast action-paced action game.
You don't like Guardians of the Galaxy? I'm surprised to hear that.
It's the engine more than anything.
Oh, I really like that game. I thought it was underrated. It should have done far better than it did.
I mean, apparently the story is great, and that's why I think. The story in the Avengers game was great, Kamala Khan, but the rest of it, and the problem is, and this is you know, I've got this with both. This problem with both the Marvel games from Square Enix. They went with the route of getting name voice actors. I mean, voice actors who are known in the games industry,
right?
And who are very nice people and very talented, but they'd have been better off getting Chris Hemsworth and Robert Downey Jr. sound-alikes. I mean, that is one of the problems that it really just pulls you out. And the same with, you know, with Guardians, it doesn't have Vin Diesel as Groot. It doesn't have Zoe Saldana. Avengers, I played it through to complete Kamala Khan's storyline because I thought it was fantastic. But the actual gameplay itself was so predictable.
Yeah, very repetitive. Yeah.
Well, the engine,
despite the fact that you can play as a bunch of different characters, it still got repetitive.
Well, the thing, you could play as different characters, but Kamala's the only one. Miss Marvel is the only character you want to play.
She was definitely the most fun of them all. Yeah.
She was, because, you know, Iron Man.
And I knew very little about that character before I played the game too. I mean, my preferences were Iron Man and Hulk and all these other characters that I had grown up with, but she ended up being the most fun to actually play. Marcus, what do you think is going to happen with this generation? How long do you think it's going to last? Because I think it might honestly last like 10 or 12 years. Pachter believes that this might be the last console generation as we know it. He has been saying for a long time that everything's going to go to this console-free future and everyone's going to be streaming games. I think he thought that might happen before PS5 and Xbox Series X, and it didn't really happen that way. Where do you land on all that stuff?
No, I'm with him. I think that the next step will be a app you download to your smart TV. or it'll be something, the equivalent of. I just happen to have something like this here, which is the Apple TV.
Mm-hmm.
We just bought we got the 4K one to go with our 4K TV. But I mean, literally, it's a little box. I mean, it's on live. It's the on live aspect. It's streaming. That's it. I mean, Sony have already, been doing it with PlayStation. Was it PlayStation Now that they're?
Mm-hmm. But that's going away now, and they're
bundling
revamping
that in the PlayStation
Plus.
Yeah, which is great because PlayStation Now is fantastic. PlayStation Now gives you access to so many great PS3 games. I've been playing Infamous 1 and 2 on PlayStation Now.
Yeah,
and
you don't have to lug around that PS3 fat, so you can have the backwards compatibility.
Yeah, I mean,
you can stream it now. Yeah, isn't it crazy to think about all the stuff that you and I have lived through in this industry, Marcus? I see all these videos on YouTube of these people talking about like the Red Ring of Death, and they do like 2.5 million views, and it was published last week. And this is just someone who's just like gone on the internet and looked up old articles on the Red Ring of Death because they weren't even alive like when the Red Ring of Death happened. Everything is just so bizarre how it's all played out. Like I'm starting to wonder if we'll get another Elder Scrolls before any of us die. Honestly, I saw there's that Skyrim lady. She's like 86 years old. Are you familiar with her?
Yeah, the old lady who's been streaming is playing herself Skyrim.
Skyrim. Well, this weekend, like an interview came out with her where she's like, I may die before I get to play Elder Scrolls 6, and she's trying to crack the whip on Todd Howard, and she's like, look, man, like I seriously may not make it and get to play this game before I'm gone. It's a different type of pressure now that the industry has grown up, because we are at the stage where elderly people played video games, and if they continued to all of them,
we are elderly.
I'm talking about like our parents, because remember, our parents are the ones who actually bought the Atari 2600. They were actually the ones who had the money to do that stuff.
I had my own savings. I bought my own first computer, 48K Sinclair Spectrum tape deck.
I did not. I'm not quite, I guess, as old as you, because my parents had to buy all that stuff for me.
Well, what are you,
now
12?
They're at the age where they're like having to think about whether they can play a game or not, or if they're going to have time to get a game in. It's, because gaming is such a new thing, they are really the first generation where this is even a consideration. It's just interesting to watch time march on with this new form of entertainment that started when we were kids. Yeah. Marcus, I just want to say, I love you, brother, and I appreciate you so much. I appreciate everything you've done with me, for me, in the last 20 some years that we've known each other. And that spans back to when you were a PR guy and you treated me with respect as a journalist. Like, it's just been 20 plus years of
you were one of the few ones there, my friend.
I believe it, because people are like, you like Marcus Beer? And I'm like, hell yeah, he's awesome. They're like, I don't know, man. But Marcus, I just want to thank you for everything that you've done for me. I don't think GameFace would have kicked off with a bang like it did if you weren't involved in it. There's a lot of value with you helping launch this show. Here we sit 300 episodes later, and I do fully believe that if you had not been on a board at the beginning to help draw the interest to the show, like, oh wow, Shane and Marcus reviving the Invisible Walls tandem, I don't think that GameFace would have made it to episode 300. So Marcus, I love you like a brother. I appreciate so many things that you've done for me and the various places I've worked. And I just wish you the best, and thank you.
No, thank you, and I'm sure GameFace will go on for a lot longer until if somebody offers to buy you out, just take the money and go on vacation. Just retire to an island somewhere or do something. Start reading that Beastie Boys book. It's really good.
Yeah.
And here's hoping I'm around for 400.
All right, so there you go, catching up with Marcus Beer. I told you the interview was kind of heavy. I see that a lot of you guys in chat had not known that he's been battling cancer. It's a tough fight, and I think a lot of you, even if you knew he had cancer, you maybe didn't know that it was terminal cancer. So, as Marcus said in the interview, he doesn't spend a lot of time on Twitter anymore, but maybe you just want to go over and send him some words of encouragement at Annoyed Gamer. I know he'd appreciate it, and he'll eventually see it. I think he may use Twitter more than he leads on.
Yeah.
But obviously, anyone in that situation needs a lot of encouragement. And I know episode 300 is supposed to be a big celebration, but Marcus is a big part of what kicked off this show and a big part of my career. And so I felt it was important to talk to him. And I know you guys wanted to know what was going on with him as well. So we still got some laughs. And I think that's really the key part there is that Marcus, even in the situation that he's in, he still has this awesome sense of humor. And he still is really a happy guy, which is amazing. Like, I have been inspired by how he has taken on this challenge in his life. So it's pretty amazing. I'm glad that he was able to be a part of GameFace 300. He has not been on any sort of podcast or show for a long time. He was, as he said, he was doing some streaming and he was doing some stuff on YouTube and some stuff on Twitch, and he's kind of dialed that back because of his health issues. But like I said, head on over, encourage him, give him some words of encouragement, boost our brother up because he definitely needs it. Moving on with episode 300, we have a big surprise for you guys. And this is what I was hinting at earlier, where I wasn't sure if it was going to work or not. I'm still not sure.
Still not sure. We got one more step to find out.
Like, as I sit here right now, I'm still not sure if it's going to work or not. But and we're watching the monitor here that you guys can't see yet. The big surprise is that for the first time ever, and this includes what happened here and at Game Trailers, Michael Pachter is going to do a live episode of Pachter Factor right here on GameFace episode 300. And the X factor here is his audio. We have not been able to get good audio out of the PC where he's on Zoom into our TriCaster where you guys can hear it. So just be honest with us. If the audio is unworkable and you guys cannot deal with it, just let us know. We've already talked to Pachter about it, and we'll just bail on the segment if it doesn't work. But it's worth the risk to do the first ever live episode of Pachter Factor. Let's just bring him in right now, and let's see how it sounds. Pachter, welcome to GameFace 300.
I was going to pretend I was talking and see if you guys made faces at me, but can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, actually.
Awesome.
I think it sounds okay.
Do you need me to do this? Is it better if I talk right into the mic?
I can't hear him. So.
For real?
The chat will tell us.
I can only hear you.
Oh, I see.
But you actually sound good in our headphones.
Actually, I can hear him through the head. If you turn him up that high, I can sort of hear. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's going to work.
Should I put on my Shane voice and start screaming?
That's right. This is a little anecdote.
A little too loud, they say, but they can hear him.
Oh, he's a little too loud? Let me turn him down. Here's a little anecdote. Good. When I go over to Pachter's house to record Pachter Factor, he always yells at me for being too loud. He always thinks that I am loud. I do have a loud voice and I have kind of a loud mouth, so I kind of get it. But I'm just used to speaking that way. My wife never complains about it, but to Pachter, it's really annoying. But anyway, here he is with his portrait behind him. Pachter, where did that come from?
I have a friend who's an amateur / professional artist who mostly does rock star portraits. And so he does like old rock stars like Jimi Hendrix and Mick Jagger. And I have, in fact, purchased some of his work, but he just did this randomly, like just to honor me. And he put it up at one of his art shows. And so he won't let me buy it. So he gave it to me. So I'm promoting his art. If you want a portrait, let me know.
Okay. How much does he usually charge? I'm guessing a lot.
I would imagine in the, low thousands, 1,000, 2,000.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Low
but
thousands, that's a lot, Pachter.
But for somebody to do something that good,
Pachter, for the people who don't work at Wedbush, that's a lot of money.
Do you have any portraits? No, if you sat for a real portrait, it's that much.
I'm sure. It's the last thing I would ever do is sit for a portrait. Yeah. Maybe when I was younger and I looked a lot better than I do now, I would. It's too late now. That ship has sailed for me. So your portrait is of you when you were a younger man.
Yeah, I think that's my 50th birthday party invitation as it happens. It's a picture that was on the internet.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Well, this is a live episode of Pachter Factor. So get your questions into the chat right now. Go at Sifted Games. I'm going to be the arbiter. I'm going to be the one who decides which questions Pachter answers. We're only going to do like 2 or 3 questions live because Pachter's busy. He's got stuff to do. And I just appreciate that he's doing this at all.
He's got portraits to sit for, Shane. God damn it.
I got an appointment with a pillow. I got to take a nap. I'm tired.
You're obstructing art.
Okay, I think I got the audio sorted out now, at least.
So can they hear me? Everybody can hear me?
Yeah, everyone can hear you fine. In fact,
Yeah,
at first
okay.
you were too loud. And
Oh,
now I
goodness.
think you're just right. At least looking at
Oh,
the levels,
goodness.
you appear to be just right in line with
louder
us.
than Shane. That doesn't happen too much.
It doesn't.
Not possible.
Okay, so get some questions in here at Sifted Games for Pactor. Obviously, he's a finance guy, so if you want to steer him towards finance, that's fine. You can ask him general questions. Pactor, are you willing to answer just any question? Is this like Ask Pactor anything?
You can do an AMA if I have an answer, but I mean, obviously, like somebody asked me today what to do with Verizon stock, and a broker here, like somebody who works with me, and I said, I am uniquely unqualified to talk about Verizon. Like, I don't know anything about them. Like, I don't know how many customers they have or whether they make money or not. I'm like, no. So you can ask me anything. If I don't know, I'm going to say, I don't know.
I don't think anyone's going to ask you about Verizon, if that makes you feel
Yeah,
better.
you just never know, right? You never know.
Okay, here's your first question.
And I'm happy to do an AMA. I'm happy to do an AMA if you want to do AMA instead.
Okay, well, we'll do both. They can ask whatever they want. Fair
Yeah.
enough? Okay.
Cool.
First one, and this is from Mike's Q, who is our voiceover guy, so I want to get his question in. With inflation and material shortages, do you think we might ever see our first price hike on game consoles instead of a price cut? Great question,
That's a great
Mike's Q.
question. No, I don't think so, but that's a really good question. If we had persistent hyperinflation, then yes. So if inflation, let's just say, was 10% a year for 5 years, and the component costs went up faster than the normal, curve would tell you that they come down, then yes. And that's kind of the case in economies like, in Latin America, like Brazil's had that problem in Venezuela. Not here. It would require the dollar to essentially be devalued before we would see prices in dollars go up. And the dollar, has been pretty strong. So what's going on right now is quite the opposite, because inflation isn't a domestic issue. It's a global issue. I know that there are plenty of people watching who say, let's go Brandon, and they think Biden's responsible for inflation. But shockingly, same inflation in France and Japan and Germany. So it's not Biden. It's supply chain and global macroeconomic crisis with what Russia's doing. Anyway, so the dollar's strong, which means that, believe it or not, Japanese companies are making more money. A dollar is worth more yen than it was last year. So Nintendo's minting money. It's kind of awesome for them. But anyway, all the components that we buy to make consoles are coming from places that are seeing the strong dollar benefit their economy. So they're more likely to ship stuff here. So in a perverse way, this is going to recover. We're going to recover faster than anybody else. So no, I don't expect persistent inflation either. If you actually looked at the inflation figures, consumption was up. GDP was down, but consumption was up, and it was exports that were down. A strong dollar is going to keep exports down. People aren't going to buy American goods if it costs them in other countries more. So we're going to have recession, yes, but inflation is not going to last. And the recession, even though it's really bad for everybody, will cure inflation. You don't have both. So recession is going to wipe out inflation. What you really want, all you people listening, is you don't want a jobs recession. So as long as everybody's employed, we'll all get through this. If you start seeing massive layoffs everywhere, and I'm not talking about at Netflix that's doing poorly, but I mean real companies, if you can't get a job, that's a problem. We are not even close to that.
Okay, wow, that's a great question and a great answer. If any of you guys ever wondered if I fed Pactor the questions beforehand, before he answered them, there's your proof. He does not. He does not see any of the questions that you guys ask of him until the minute that I'm there and we're recording the episodes. And there is your proof. He can answer this stuff right off the top of his head right then.
I'm
Next
never
question. This is actually
right,
a
but I have an
question
answer.
that I wanted to ask you, and I'm glad somebody in chat did, so I didn't have to fake it or whatever. This one comes from Sneaky Solid Snake. Let's see if I can find it here. Oh, it just got lost. Here it is. Is it true that Microsoft could be hoarding chips so less PS5s are made? Pactor, there's this rumor floating around that Microsoft has lined the pockets of chip manufacturers so that it gets more chips and it can make Xbox consoles and PlayStation cannot. Can you please go on the record and explain what's going on there?
I'm not 100% sure that I'm right on this, so anybody who knows better can correct me. I think both consoles have the same CPU, GPU supplier. I think it's still AMD, and I have to say I know that was true for PS4 and Xbox One. I think it's true of PS5 and Xbox Series. And if I'm right, then AMD would never do that. They would make sure that they supplied both. If I'm right, that's like saying Amazon Web Services would favor Amazon Prime Video at the expense of Netflix and wouldn't deliver Netflix's streaming signal. You can't do that. You can't stay in business if you're AMD and favor Microsoft over Sony. So I don't believe, if I'm right about AMD, that would happen. If they don't use the same chip, who cares what Microsoft buys? Because Sony has its own suppliers. So I think probably the rumors coming because they use not identical, but the same manufacturer. And there's just no amount of money Microsoft could spend to screw that up. Think through Microsoft buying Activision. The big fear was they're going to pull all Activision content off to screw Sony. And Microsoft said repeatedly, we won't do that. So, Microsoft under scrutiny from the regulators over the Activision deal is not going to do anything to hurt Sony, not while they're waiting for approval on Activision. So I would say absolute bunk. That rumor is wrong. But if somebody can prove otherwise, go for it. There's actually rewards if you're a whistleblower in an antitrust action. So if you can bring that, if you have real proof and you take it to the government, you're right, then you'll actually get paid by the government for helping them in that suit.
It is AMD, by the way, that makes both the chips. So.
That's what I thought. No, it's like one of those things. I'm sure I looked at it, years ago, but I just forgot. So.
Yep. So Pac is saying no on paying for chip priority from Microsoft. Pac, I don't know if you realize it or not, but that was a huge thing flying around the internet for the last 3 weeks. Everyone was saying, "Oh, Microsoft, that's why you can buy an Xbox Series console when you can't buy a PS5 because they have chip priority," was what they were saying.
Well, and the truth is that there's twice as much demand for PlayStation, so it's probably that that if they produce nearly the same, or let's say Sony produces a million PS5s and Microsoft can make 700,000 Xboxes, and demand is 1.4 million and 700,000. Sony's out of stock and Microsoft's fully stocked. That's what's probably going on.
Okay. There you go. Great answer, as usual. Next up, a question from Erebus Jones. I lost that one, too, because you guys are asking so many questions. We could do this for the next 3 hours.
The Jim Ryan one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Erebus Jones. Jim Ryan stirred up a bit of controversy this week with his non-committal comments on a woman's right to choose. Is this a storm in a teacup for him, or could it get worse?
Well, I have to say that, like Jim Ryan, I am a cat person. So I was actually really encouraged to hear that he has cats. And I married a woman who's allergic to cats. So and my cats were 13 and 11 when we moved in together. So I gave my cats to some little old ladies in an old folks home who cared for them until they died. And I went and visited them. And now I'm a dog person. So I really think that whole his big long dialogue, he got in trouble for saying, we can't be committal on a woman's right to choose. And oh, by the way, I love cats and dogs are great too. So
why did he bring up the cats and dogs stuff?
Because he's a genuinely odd guy, and that's why I brought it up. I'm kidding. I do love cats. I'm the cat whisperer. They come to me. But the controversy isn't over Jim Ryan saying, let's be tolerant of people with opposing views. The controversy is that Jim Ryan deflected and started talking about cats and dogs. So, and to be fair, you know how I feel about this guy. Jason Schreier is a great reporter. He really is. He digs up great stuff, but he has an agenda, and his agenda is all corporate leaders are evil, greedy people. So Jason's writing tends to cast the head guy as out of touch with reality. And Jason found something that showed Jim Ryan out of touch. So, my experience with Jim Ryan, he's a gentleman. I like him. I think he's really smart, thoughtful, kind, good guy. Did he write a bad memo to employees? Yeah, he talked about his cats. And so should they etch on his tombstone, Jim Ryan was out of touch because of one note, or do we give him the benefit of the doubt? Remember the message, which is abortion is a big deal in the U.S. right now. We're about to turn the United States into Gilead and outlaw abortion. My understanding is 28 states are considering it, truly outlawing abortion. And there are states that are saying, and I think I always get them mixed up, Louisiana, Mississippi, said it's a crime to leave the state to get an abortion. If you leave the state and get an abortion, then when you come back, they'll arrest you. Well, there's a provision in the U.S. Constitution called the right to travel. It's actually there. And it says you have an absolute right to travel among the states. So that's the most unconstitutional thing I've ever seen. But we have state legislators who are hell-bent on controlling women's bodies. So when Jim Ryan says, stay out of this, and by the way, my employer probably wants me to stay out of it too, but I have a strong view.
Won't tell.
No, I have a strong view that government should leave us the fuck alone. Like, let us control our own bodies. And I believe that about smoking marijuana too. And I actually don't, but I believe it that you should. So, where are they going to stop? And so Jim Ryan is just saying, look, we're going to sell fewer PlayStations if we alienate the people who are anti-abortion or pro-life or anti-choice, whatever you want to call them. So let's just not be public in our statements and say anything. That's what he's saying. I'm okay with that. We got a business to run, so, and like I said, I am certain, I think I read that abortion is favored by 64% of the population. 36% aren't in favor. So that's close enough that you want to sell PlayStations to the 36% as well. So don't take a position. It's an appropriate thing for a CEO to say, when at work, don't talk about politics. I think that's what he's trying to do. But he deflected by talking about cats. And Jason Schreier made fun of him. And so Jason broke it. Good for him. And, and again, I prefaced all this with, I am the cat whisperer. So anybody who likes cats, I automatically like them.
Pactor, isn't part of it that people in the industry have learned that when they come across stuff like that, they know to send it to Jason Schreier?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think that, like I said, I think Jason is, he falls down on the job, is Jason just automatically assumes that the workers need representation and the owners are bad. And I think that there are situations where the owners exploit the workers and the owners take advantage and they disproportionately profit. And there are situations where the workers get paid handsomely. You and I have a bunch of friends who work for Epic. Have you heard anybody there say, oh, I hate working for Epic because they exploit me and they don't pay me enough? No, they're all like, what an awesome place. Right, exactly. So now Jason hasn't written an article yet about Tim Sweeney, the taskmaster, but he would. He'd be like, Fortnite should unionize, but they shouldn't, because if your employer takes care of you, so I think Jason just has a bias. And, in fairness, all people have biases. I have mine and he has his. And I'm just, I get paid to have an opinion. He's not an opinion writer. He's a news reporter.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next one from Sweet Cheeks Magoo. Pactor, have you ever made a bad prediction? If so, what was it? And then I'll add on there, what do you think is the worst prediction you've ever made?
Wait, over what time frame? Like today?
Doesn't matter.
Yes.
Just
yes.
Period.
No. Have I ever made a bad prediction? Today? Yes. Yesterday? Yes. Like what? I mean, okay. My job is to estimate what companies will earn, and I'm going to give you kind of statistics terms. But when you estimate what companies are going to earn, you're adding up the sum of all the different streams that they generate in revenue. So I'm not exaggerating. I'll make it easy. If I was looking at McDonald's, I would have to calculate how many single burgers, double burgers, quarter pounders, fish sandwiches, chicken sandwiches, shakes, sodas, everything, add it all up, and then come up with a revenue number. and every single one of my estimates would be wrong. But what you want to do is have as much detail in your forecast so that the sum of all your mistakes gets really close to zero, right? So that's what I do. So I forecast every single game every company publishes. I forecast how much recurring revenue they have in mobile on each game by game. I forecast how much advertising revenue they generate. Man, you should see my Electronic Arts model. I mean, I have Ultimate Team broken into by sport, by FIFA, by Madden, by whatever. And they don't report it all, but that's just how I do it. So it builds up and it adds up. And I'm remarkably accurate, but every single number in my estimate is wrong. Every one. So, and I don't care if I say McDonald's is going to sell 10 cheeseburgers and 4 quarter pounders, and it turns out it's 12 cheeseburgers and 3 quarter pounders, the revenue comes out to be the same. So I'm okay. But that's how I do it for discipline. So the answer is I am wrong every single day. I've never been right. And the worst prediction I ever made, Grand Theft Auto 3, back in 2001, I predicted it would sell 325,000 units. I missed by 35 million. I missed by 99%. Just so close. I wasn't even close. That's the worst that I can ever remember. But yeah, I mean, the most embarrassing, I remember when World of Warcraft launched, again, 2004, and I said they would top out at 4 million subscribers, and they got to 12. Now, I didn't miss by as much. I only missed by, 200%. So sure, I miss all the time. Like, never embarrassed, because my job is to be right more often than I'm wrong. And I am approaching my 23rd anniversary doing this, and I am earning more this year than I have ever earned ever in my life. And I was very comfortable back when I started doing bonus rounds. So clearly I'm doing something right, or they wouldn't pay me. But man, I'm wrong daily.
All right. We'll ask you one more question and we'll let you go. This has been awesome, by the way. We should try to do this again. If this isn't too much of a pain in your butt. I don't mind doing
AMAs. AMAs are fun. I'm fine with that. That's easy.
It's hard to pick the last one, but I'll go with this one from Cinetike. How are shipping costs still so high? Has there been no work whatsoever on improving the supply of shipping services?
All right. It's a bottleneck issue at the ports and a bottleneck issue in trucking. So what happens is that the ports and the transportation system, the ground transportation system, are optimized for a steady flow. And I'll make this up, but let's pretend that that you expect 100 containers a day at the port for 365 days, right? So that's 36,500 containers a year. You have enough trucking and enough port loading arms to handle 100 a day. And what happens when you have, the ports out of business for a while because of COVID, you don't have enough people working there, you don't have enough drivers on the trucks or whatever, you get a backup of 200 or 300 or 400 containers. And when demand spikes, now you're trying to run 120 containers through the port. So you're running it more hours a day. There aren't enough trucks. And what's really going on is demand got so big that we're back to normal supply. In my example, we're back to 100 containers a day. It's just that demand is at 120 a day. And after, let's call it 5 days, now we need 200 containers. We're behind by 100. And after 10 days, we're behind by 200. That's the problem. So its supply has to catch up with demand. And it's just the longer the supply demand imbalance tilted in favor of, more supply than demand, more demand than supply, the longer it takes to work off. I've seen estimates that this doesn't fix itself till spring, so a year from now. So I don't know the answer, because obviously everything's a little different, but the way it normalizes, container costs go up, and I'm making these numbers up. This is close though. A container used to cost $4,000 to rent the whole thing, from putting it on the ship to go back to China, until it came back here, until it started to go back to China again. So that's going to China, loading up with stuff, coming back here, getting on a truck, delivering everywhere, going back onto the ship to go to China. So that process, $4,000 probably was a 6-week, 8-week process. That's 20,000 now because there's so much demand for containers. And what do? You know, yes, I guess if you're buying super high value stuff, you know, like iPhones, you can air freight these. But if you're buying, you know, potatoes, no, you wouldn't air freight potatoes. It wouldn't make any sense. So I don't think it's gonna fix itself for quite a while. And you know, whose fault is it? And honestly, as much as I hate Trump, it's not his fault. It's because we shut everything down during COVID. And it wasn't Trump's fault that we shut it down. It was people buying, and we had to fix things. And what ended up happening is we all worked at home, so we weren't eating out as much. So, you know, remember we ran out of toilet paper? You know why that happened? Because half of all toilet paper is made for industrial use, for offices. And we stopped going to offices, and they didn't have the supply chain to get that to grocery stores so we could buy it. It took months to fix that. So the world, they call it just in time. The world is set up for just in time manufacturing, just in time delivery, just in time consumption. And if you tweak that a little bit and you miss by a few days, you're screwed for weeks. We mess with that for a year. So that's what's going on. And I have to say, the fun thing for me, I started a project here, which I can't do. I had to hire a plumber to get a tankless water heater put in. I started the process March 2nd. It is May 17th, and I still don't have a date for the plumber to actually install it.
Wow.
So I've been waiting for 10 weeks, and it's mostly because the plumber's backed up, like so busy. But it's me and everybody else who's doing home improvement projects. And guess what? We don't magically invent more plumbers. You know, we got the same number of plumbers. They're just so busy. I have a buddy who's an asphalt contractor. He went from running one crew before COVID to running 3 full-time crews right now. And he's buying a new boat because he's making so much money. No, good for him, you know,
Yeah,
but I have a friend with a restaurant that's breakfast, lunch only. She wanted to open it up for dinner, can't hire a short order cook. She can't find a cook. It's just like, that's what's going on with everything. And so the big constraint here is full employment. So you can't just go add a bunch of employees. So the solution is you pay truck drivers $100,000 or $150,000 a year because you need to in order to get this stuff delivered. And even then, we need more trucks, and you know, GM is backed up on trucks, and so it doesn't fix itself quickly. This is a once in a lifetime life disruption that we had. And, well,
go through this again, Pac.
well, I think that we have to get in front of it, and I think vaccines will help. But yeah, once in a lifetime disruption, and it's going to be a once in a lifetime pain getting through it. So the good news is full employment, and if you don't like your job, you can get a better paying one by leaving. So that's what's going on.
Awesome. Pac, thank you so much for coming on the show today for episode 300. Again, the first time you've ever done a live Q&A, even from the Pac Attack days, we never did that at Game Trailers. So I appreciate you taking some time out of your day.
I do the press every day. That's right. Always live.
Yeah, your live Q&A is with like CNBC usually. Not,
exactly.
Not with people like
I gotta say, you guys aren't tougher than CNBC, so don't worry.
You look better on GameFace than you do on CNBC. I'm just telling you.
Thank you. Same seat.
Well, much love, Pactor. Thanks again, man. Have yourself a great afternoon, okay?
All right.
Thanks, Pac.
Later. Wow. That was great. It actually worked, Matt.
Yeah, it worked.
Everything worked the way it was supposed to for once. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I hope you guys have a new appreciation for how Pac does his show. Like, it is literally off the cuff. And when we first start like recording every session, like, and you guys probably have seen this if you watch the show, is when he starts, his answers are really long, and as we go, they get shorter and shorter. And I've learned this, so I stack the questions in such a way that I make sure that the questions we really want him to hit hard on are some of the first ones that we record. So it's all a science when it comes down to Pactor Factor. But really appreciate him coming in and being a part of episode 300. I hope you guys enjoyed the live Q&A. Maybe we can convince him to come back and do something else with us in the future. Maybe like once a month we can get him to come on or something.
Yeah, you just throw like episode 325. Nice little round numbers at him.
Yeah, we can maybe figure something out. But thanks to you guys, too. You guys came up with great questions right on the fly there. Maybe it would have been smarter if I had told people in advance that we were doing that so they could get questions together. But you guys knocked it out of the park. You guys did a really great job. And wow, the chat is going crazy. So it looked like you guys really enjoyed it. And people are pulling out the pack emojis. That's awesome. Yeah, I don't even know if Pactor is like watching to see all this stuff, but I'll be sure to pass it along to him and let him know. So Kevin Roth is asking, have we ever heard how Shane and Pactor met? It was at Game Trailers. Yeah, he and I recorded an episode of Bonus Round together, and after I challenged him on the show. He said, and I don't know if you go back and watch the old episodes of Bonus Round, Pac and I went back and forth a lot on that show, and it was always in good fun, and we obviously love each other like brothers or whatever, but he and I would tangle a little bit on Bonus Round. And that very first episode that we met, he had said something and I challenged him on it, and being the cool guy that he is, when the show was over, instead of being pissy about it, he came up and was like, you made a good point, and we've been friends ever since. And we worked together on Game Trailers for years and years, and then he started doing Pactor Factor here on Sifted for us. So much love to Michael Pactor. He is the man. Some of you guys are really using the emojis in great ways here. It's pretty awesome, actually. You can show Sneaky's giving him wings there. That's pretty awesome. Good guy, Pac. You are absolutely right. Pactor is A+, 110% good dude. And Mr. Starwalker says, I love Bonus Round. I miss those. I do too. Unfortunately, it is the most expensive show to do. And I don't think anyone will ever do it again. Because you have to pay people to come into town. Mm-hmm. We have to pay for people to fly in, and we have to put them up in a hotel overnight. Obviously,
as a comparison point, even XPlay couldn't afford to do that.
Yeah, and you were a TV show. Yeah. And so we basically sacrificed to do it because we knew it was something that no one else was doing. It would help us get attention when we were trying to start out. Mm-hmm. And it just, I don't think it'll ever happen again. We did try towards the end when the powers that be were like, you need to squeeze the belt a little bit and cut down on some of the stuff that you're doing. Then we did shift focus for the show a little bit, and we were a little more conscious of trying to get local people instead of trying to get people in from New York or Europe or wherever they were.
I mean, we liked it when you did that because then we could get them on our show.
Right, because we bring them into town. Yeah. So unfortunately, Bonus Round is one of those flash-in-the-pan things that the people who were there, and if you were there, I hope you enjoyed it, but it's not feasible for most people.
Kind of like the entire 2000s, really.
It kind of was.
That decade was just sort of like, it really wasn't. That was like a weird liminal space that's never going to happen again.
The early aughts, yeah. It was a magical time because everything was so new. It's like we were the first website that was just video for video games.
Like it was just like this constant. It was like 10 years of transition on about 3 different levels.
Yeah, it was amazing. So next time we do that, we'll be a little better geared up. Like next time you'll have headphones. So I felt bad for you for that whole segment because he could not hear what Pactor was saying, so he couldn't really respond to him.
I just sort of played the movie Diner in my head. I tried to lip read Pactor, but that doesn't work too well.
Yeah. Sneaky says Bonus Round got bleh at the end, good early on. I don't know. I guess that show did depend on the quality of the guests, and the quality, it's like anything, though. It's like this show. It depends on what's happening. You can, if you're smart and clever and crafty, you can figure out ways to get through dry patches without a lot of big game releases, but there's no arguing that the shows that we had in February and March, when every episode we had like 2 or 3 big games, there's no denying those are better episodes. That's why you guys watch. You want to hear our takes on the big games that are coming out and try to figure out whether you should buy them or not. And when they're not coming out, we have to get smart. We have to figure out ways to make it work. And the shows generally aren't as good, and there's nothing we can do about that. We can't control it. So it's the same deal with Bonus Round and pretty much any type of content that you're doing, and not just in games, but in any industry, really. If there's not much happening in the industry, it's hard to make stuff happen. So, that was great. I really enjoyed that. And that
hard to do an NFL podcast in April.
It is, yeah, exactly. Well, actually, now it's not that hard.
No, there's more stuff happening.
Because they've they've structured the NFL in such a way that it's now 365.
Right, because they're a business, it's got to happen that way. But like,
and people care.
Yeah,
it's like people care.
But there
about,
was a time where you just didn't hear about football.
It just
between
disappeared.
The Super Bowl and like
nothing.
Late
There'd
spring
be the
training.
draft.
Maybe, it'd be a draft. There'd be spring training, or like there'd be boot camp basically.
Yeah.
But then like you didn't really hear it until the first games.
Well, once the NFL
preseason.
realized that people would watch NFL teams practice, it was all over.
All out the window.
So now they figured out that like they have like their OTAs and they have their rookie camp, they have their OTAs, they have the draft, they have the NFL combine, and then they have their real training camp, and then the preseason. They have managed to stretch the NFL season out to a full year because people are that interested in it. But
Learn
like
from reality TV.
Yeah, but like basketball, hockey, baseball, people just don't care enough about those sports to watch content around it all year round.
With baseball, it's hard to get people to watch the sport.
Period. So. Yeah. The average age of the World Series viewer is almost 60 years old.
Yeah. It's like comic books, like physical comic books. Like once once our generation dies off, that's pretty much the end of that.
Yep.
And it feels like that might be true for baseball too.
Yep. Well, people, that kind of does it for the special part of GameFace 300. Believe it or not, Matt and I have a whole episode of other content for you guys today. I played a game this week. Matt played a game this week that we're going to talk about, and we're going to get into that right now. We're going to kick things off, and I hope I have my graphics correct here. Nope. Now I do. We're going to kick things off by talking about Evil Dead, the game. Matt, I'm just going to go full disclosure here. I am a gigantic Evil Dead fan. For a good 15 years of my life, I would have said that my favorite horror movie was the original Evil Dead. And then eventually those effects became almost corny over time. When I was like a child, and I was a child when I watched Evil Dead for the first time, that movie scared the living crap out of me. Like, I couldn't sleep for like 4 days. It disturbed me hardcore. Now I watch it and I'm like, oh, that's like rice. I was like, oh my god, they're eating maggots, and it's just rice or whatever. But anyway, I am a gigantic Evil Dead fan. I have like the collector's editions of the movies. I have the one that's like the Necronomicon. It's
I
like
had
this,
that until it started to rot.
Yeah, it's like this weird rubbery demon face on the DVD cover. I am a big Evil Dead fan. So just know that's where I'm coming from when I talk about this game. Matt, have you played it at all?
No.
Okay. So it is a 4v1 asymmetrical multiplayer game, and
does have an X-Play alum working on it though.
Who?
A girl named Erica.
Really?
Who? She was an intern, and that actually she started because I met her at PAX in Seattle. I think it was Seattle, and she came up while we were shooting in the Fallout trailer, the little like trailer thing we had. And like basically it was just like, I desperately want to work on your show. I love your show. And I'm like, well, you got to be, in school, and you got to, be in LA. And she's like, I'll figure it out. I'm like, okay, email me and I'll tell Wade, our series producer, like, make sure. And like a couple months later, she came in the office. She's like, I made it. And I'm like, okay. And from there, she's like, she went on to work at E and Ubisoft and all these places, but she's working on this game. So,
okay.
So there's a G4 connection on this one. I've seen her posting about it.
Okay. So as I said, this is a 4v1 multiplayer game. You play as one of two sides. You either play as the survivors, which are the humans, or you can play as essentially the demons, the Deadites, the Kandarian, whatever the hell you want to call them. Mm-hmm. And if you play as the demons, you play by yourself. And you basically play Dungeon Master. Your goal is to obviously stop the survivors, and you can use possession of almost anything to do that. So that's the basic premise of the game.
This is the people that made Friday the 13th, right?
I believe so, but it
sure looks like Friday the 13th.
I mean, it is very similar to like a lot of those games, Dead by Daylight.
Yeah, of course, it's obviously like from that side. But I thought this was the people who made Friday the 13th game.
Now, if you have played the Friday the 13th game, one thing you realize very quickly is that the long-term value of these games depend heavily on the IP that they're based upon.
Yeah. Well, in the case of that game, they got screwed on the licensing issues. So.
Yeah, there was a bunch of issues with the license there. But a lot of it is like, how many characters really are there in this universe that people care about? Now I'm an Evil Dead head.
I can answer that for you for this and say 1.
1, right? Yeah. Now I'm an Evil Dead maniac. I know all the characters from all the films, and I do have an affinity towards a lot of them. But most people are going to play this game, and they're going to be like, I know Ash, and
that's about it.
That's it. Otherwise,
have you seen Doctor Strange, the new one?
No.
You should. I mean, an Evil Dead fan is going to find some familiar things in it.
Oh, really?
Because it's Sam Raimi directing.
Oh, okay.
He throws everything. I mean, there's definitely some stuff as an Evil Dead fan, which I am not really.
Yeah.
I like Army of Darkness. That's how you know.
See, I don't like that
that's how
one.
you know I'm not a real Evil
That's
Dead
the
fan
one
because
I
I think
don't
that's the best one.
Yeah, see, that's my least favorite. Yeah.
I find the first Evil Dead unwatchably bad.
Really?
Just in terms of, I mean, I saw it probably around the same time you did, and I just thought it was funny. Like I thought,
really,
like because like I know they're trying to be gory and serious, but like it was just the effects in that were always ridiculous to me.
I didn't think they were.
I think Evil Dead 2 is a vastly better.
Like
version.
the one shot where
because Evil Dead 2 is basically a remake.
It is with like comedy.
Yeah. And like Raimi kind of found his niche there.
Yeah. The first one, I thought it was gory out that like there's.
They want it to be, but like those effects never.
See, I like that they used like white instead of red for the blood. Like that freaked me out. Like there's the one scene where he's out and he's burying the bodies, and the one possessed girl dives at him, and he takes the shovel, and as she's diving, he chops her head off, and then the corpse falls on him, and the neck pumps the white crap like down his throat. Like as a kid. That I lost it, dude. I was like, are you effing kidding me? You got to realize, like, there weren't movies like that. Even the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, if you go watch the original movie, it's not very gory. There's only, like, 3 scenes that are even kind of gory. And the one, it isn't even really gory when he puts her on the meat hook. It's just disturbing. Like, there just weren't movies like that back then.
Yeah, it was more the art direction was. I mean, they used like real meat for things,
right?
Like,
I mean,
but like,
look, don't get me wrong.
In terms
Texas
of people
Chainsaw Massacre scared the crap out of me.
Yeah, but in terms of people like actually getting butchered on screen,
yeah,
really
this was. I mean, the first Evil Dead was just beyond. Like, eventually you got Day of the Dead, which was rated X, and they had to not show it in a lot of theaters, or they had to show it in actual porn theaters in New York because he didn't want to basically neuter the movie and take out the gore. That was the next big step up as far as that's concerned.
Which is funny because nowadays it probably would barely get a mid-R.
It's still pretty burly.
It's pretty gory, but like gore doesn't get you an X anymore.
Yeah, you're right. But there's that one scene, like the gore in that was.
NC-17.
Now I'm turning into my old gorehound self. But there's a scene in Day of the Dead where the zombies rip this guy apart, and the zombies put their fingers in his eye holes and they pull his head apart. And if you listen, and this is how sick Raimi was, his voice, as they stretch his vocal cords and they snap, his voice goes, ah, yeah, and then snap. Like, anyway.
I mean, Romero was,
I used to
meticulous.
love these films, and I used to know everything about them. I used to have a subscription to Fangoria magazine. I had a poster on my wall as a kid of the scene from Videodrome where the body exploded, and it was literally a centerfold from Fangoria that was like 4 feet long. My dad would come in my room, and he thought I was like a little psychopath. He's like, "What is that on your wall?" He's like, "That's someone like
Cronenberg, son, respect. Put some respect on the man's name."
Yeah. So anyway, just to kind of tell you where I'm coming from with this, and even I will agree that like the characters in this, nobody's gonna care. I really didn't even care all that much, to be honest.
I mean, it doesn't really matter.
You don't think it does?
I mean, I think you gain. I think if you get into the game and you play a certain character, whether you know them from the movies or not, you're gonna get attached to that character. I remember.
They're pretty nondescript.
I remember the guy with the red hair from Army of Darkness.
Yeah,
the knight.
Well, yeah, he's dressed as the knight. That's the.
But I remember that character. I don't remember his name, but I do remember him in that movie.
Yep. Well, this has 13 characters from all 3 original movies, plus the 2015 TV comedy spinoff, Ash versus Evil Dead. All the characters are divided into 4 different classes. There's a leader, a warrior, a hunter, and support. You can pretty much figure out what all those classes do. Each character has a distinct set of abilities within that class. Like, support characters can, like, one support character would, like, lay down a healing aura that restored, like, the health of the whole party. But then there was another character that was in the healing class that would restore his own health when he would deliver a heavy attack. So even within the different classes, there are variations on how those class abilities actually work. You can permanently level up your characters, and that will increase aspects of their abilities as well. things like the resistance to fear, and resistance to fear in this game is very important because it's a little bit like Eternal Darkness, and if you become too scared or too disturbed, you can become possessed in this. It's easier for the person who is playing as the demon to then possess you. And once they possess you, they take control of your body and then go attack like your teammates. So a big part of this game is staying close to your teammates, because if you get away from them, your fear level basically skyrockets. And so teamwork is pretty important in this as far as that's concerned. And there's a very specific pattern of things that you need to do as a team. First, you have to find 3 map fragments. And those, once you do that, you have the whole map, and then that points you to the Necronomicon and the Kandarian dagger. And the Necronomicon, once you find the location, you collect pages of that, then you collect the dagger. And basically what's happening when you're doing this is it's a horde mode. So you get to the Kandarian dagger, you activate it, and then you defend the Kandarian dagger for X amount of time. And you do that with the map pages, you do that with the Necronomicon, then you do that with the Kandarian dagger, and then you end up here. And this is like the final confrontation where you're fighting the Dark Ones. And so once you have the dagger, you can use that electric attack to attack the Dark Ones. And they have a meter that goes down, and while this is happening, the person who is playing the demon is spawning tons of enemies around you, and then eventually the person who plays as a demon can play as the boss character from that demon set. Now, there's 9 different sets of demons that you can play as. And as those sets, you have like the lead...
You got possessed.
Yeah, exactly. You have like the lead demon, who's the boss basically, but then also the soldiers and the foot soldiers are different for each of those 9. And so once you get to this point, it's all hands on deck. It's you guys trying to team up to take down the Dark Ones while the demon is spawning demons all around you. And after you defeat these guys, then the Necronomicon sits there, and you have to go through another wave of enemies defending the Necronomicon. And then
you have to remember the words.
What'd you say?
You have to remember the words.
Which words?
Klaatu Varada Nikto.
Oh, wow. You're going to summon some crap up in here, Kyle.
I'm going to summon the guy from Day the Earth Stood Still, because that's where it's from. Or the aliens from Jabba's palace.
Yeah.
But no, that probably is just Army of Darkness, though.
Yeah.
Although there's a lot of Army of Darkness stuff in here.
Oh, yeah. They have, like I said, it includes all 3 films. It is kind of crazy that there's only 3 original films for an IP that's stood the test of time and been around this long.
Well, that's dedicated fans.
Yeah, I'm one of them, for sure. So now at this point, we're defending the Necronomicon. The Dark Ones have disappeared, and you see there's the book there. And there's that little meter that tells you how much time is left, and it just turns into a mad scramble, a mad dash at the end. There's the boss.
Ash.
Yeah, there's the boss there, too, by the way. So whoever's playing the demon has now manifested as the boss, and we're trying to take him down. You can see the health meter for those.
Yeah, it's not going too well for Evil
Nope.
Ash.
It's definitely not. But that's the pattern. You start each match, you go and you try to find the pages of the map. Once you get the map, then you know where the dagger and the Necronomicon are. Then you go and activate those. You basically go through a horde mode around those. Then you come to the Dark Ones and do another horde mode around them. What else? Let's talk about what it's like to play as the demons. So when I first started playing this, I really had little interest in playing as the demons. And are you like that, Matt? Do you always prefer to play as the team or the 1? Do you prefer to play as the 4 or the 1 in these games?
The 1.
You do? Okay.
I don't have to worry about what the idiots on my team are doing.
Okay, fair enough. I hear that. I prefer to play as the 4 for whatever reason, and I think a big part of it is that generally I assume that the 1 is more complicated, and usually it is.
Usually.
And in this game, it is as well. If you play as a demon, it is a much more complicated game to play, but I believe it's a lot more fun. And the reason I like it, a lot of these games, the 1 is like Jason. And he's just this dude. Like, Jason had some special powers. Like, couldn't he run fast and, like, teleport?
Depending on which Jason you were using. But
yeah.
Yeah, they all had a different power kind of somewhat based on what he did in the movie they were from.
When this is one of the coolest parts of the game, honestly. In this, the demon travels like the demon from the movies. So he can move through the woods.
Like the first person
camera
speed.
That made me feel more like I was playing an Evil Dead game than anything else. Playing as the demon and whipping through the woods.
I love that guy, the guy that looks like the actor who played the character, which means they had to go get his likeness right.
Yeah.
Which must have been an amazing phone call to get.
Yeah.
30 years after you did that movie.
And and we'll give you $40. Cool.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I'll take it. But playing as the demon, you start out, and there are these orbs that you have to pick up, and you'll see it later in the B-roll. I actually play as the demon and kind of show it off to you guys. But you fly through the woods, and these orbs that you pick up, which are basically your currency that allows you to do the demon stuff. So a demon can possess a number of things. It can
That's
possess...
what I call vodka.
Yeah, exactly. It can possess NPCs. It can possess trees, which is crazy, which is right in line with the with the IP, obviously.
That's canon.
Yep. It can possess cars. It can possess a car while they're in the car, and you can shove them out.
Is the car in it?
Of course it is. Yeah. What's it called? There's a name.
I can't
for
remember.
It.
It's in Doctor Strange.
Yeah, but it is.
Yeah,
but it's in this too. And there's cars everywhere. You can get in cars. It's really weird because there's cars everywhere, but it's really hard to drive because it's always in the woods. So you're constantly trying to swerve around trees and stuff. Like, there are roads, but like if you follow the roads, it'll take you forever to get somewhere. So a lot of times you get in a car with somebody who can't drive, and you're just banging off of trees, pinballing off trees the whole way onto your destination. So anyway, as the demon, you pick up these orbs, and that gives you the currency to do all the possessions. And not only can you possess things, you can also set up traps that are basically like jump scares. Like, there's these little like rifts almost that you find through the world, and then you spend some of your resources, and if someone comes across them, it's basically just subjects them to a jump scare, and then increases their fear and makes it easier for you to possess them. You can also obviously possess the other team, or the team that you're playing against. Once their fear level is at a certain level, it's much easier to possess them, and that's kind of your goal. And at the very end, you can manifest you basically manifest the boss, so you can actually go in and physically fight. You can physically fight, too, if you possess, like, one of the 4 characters. You actually take them over for a limited amount of time. You can possess the cars and drive the cars and run over the 4 other players with the car. It's just, there's a lot more flexibility when you play as the demon versus playing as the humans in this game. And so, for me, it's the first 4v1 asymmetrical multiplayer game where I enjoy playing the 1 more than I enjoy playing as the 4. And it does feel a little bit like you're a dungeon master. And another thing I would argue that sets this apart, Matt, is that they can't see you. That changes a lot in this. Like even though like some of Jason's forms or whatever could teleport or run really fast or do whatever he could do, you could always see him. In this, like, you can almost sit back. And again, this is very much like Evil Dead. Because there are scenes in Evil Dead movies where the demon's just sitting in the woods watching. And they'll just show the camera from that first-person perspective for a little while as it whips around outside the cabin and is like looking inside the windows and stuff. That is portrayed in this game. And it's a voyeuristic a little bit because you can sit back. And one thing I also like that I could do in this game is once you understand the flow that I explained earlier, which is find the map fragments and then find the knife, and then find the Necronomicon. You know what the 4 are going to do. And so I wouldn't even bother with messing with them while they were collecting the pieces of the map. Instead, I would go to the Kandarian dagger, or I would go to the Necronomicon, and I would set things up. So I would take a car, I would put it on top of the dagger, and possess it so that when they get in the car to move it so they can access the dagger, they get attacked. And you can just set up like a trap, basically, around these objects, and then just sit in the woods and watch it all go down. And that, to me, was the coolest part about this game. The voyeurism angle of it. Like, setting up a mouse trap and then watching the mice come and try to get through the mouse trap. That was a lot of fun to me, I thought. What else? There's a tutorial. It's good. It teaches you both sides. There's a tutorial for each one of them. There are single-player missions in this, but they're not like campaign missions. They're loosely based around scenes from the films, but really it's just like one element from like some scene that you'll remember. But for the most part, they're really boring. But what sucks is that a lot of the unlocks, you have to unlock them playing through the missions. And so you kind of are forced, if you want to unlock new characters, because when you start, there's a handful, but like I said, there's 13 total. When you start, there's only 3 demons unlocked, and there's ultimately 9 that you can unlock. So you have to play through this game a lot to get access to all that stuff. As I mentioned, as you play and compete, not only do your abilities level up, but also you unlock stuff through all the different stuff that you do, new characters. There's only 2 maps in this game, Matt. That is my biggest criticism of this entire game. 2 maps. It gets old real fast.
Yeah, that is sort of the thing that I found to be a problem with these games in general. Like, I remember being shocked when I found out that every game of Dead by Daylight is the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because they had so many killers and so many enemies, and I kind of figured that, like, all those enemies have different abilities, but I kind of figured there were different ways you had to beat each one.
Right.
But no, it's the same thing every time, and it has no thematic connection to. I think that's awful.
Yeah.
Like, at least this, I see, this is all rooted in, maybe they're doing the same thing every time, but I can see that it's rooted in the theme of Evil Dead, more or less. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of my problem with multiplayer games in general, is just doing the same thing over and over again, and I don't care what happens.
This does become very rote because, again, you have to follow the same process every game.
Yeah.
And there's only 2 maps.
And there's only so many places you can put the pieces that they're supposed to find. And are they in the same place every time, or is it like randomized places?
I think they're randomized. Yeah. Yeah, they are. And then a third map is coming. They've announced it already, and you'll be happy to know that it is from your favorite Evil Dead movie. But then there will still only be 3 maps, which isn't that much.
Well, it'd just be like a castle, I guess.
Yeah, it's the castle, the Kandarian castle. Yep. The controls are trash. Honestly, there's no jump button in the game. There is a clamber button, and I've been playing this on Xbox Series X, and this footage is from Xbox Series X. And you hit the Y to clamber over stuff, but it's very awkward and weird, and it's hard to tell what you can and can't climb over. And so a lot of the times, and if you're scared and you're trying to get away, you try to like just run up a little ramp, and you just never know whether your character is going to be able to run up the ramp, or it's going to be like, nope, you can't go up that. So you're always kind of looking for a pathway that you could run on, which does ratchet up the fear and the terror a little bit, but it just feels cheap after a while. And it's like, why can't I jump in this game? Like, you literally can't jump up on something that's a foot tall. It seems silly. Auto lock for enemies works when it's just like 1 or 2 of them, but then things get messy when there are like a bunch of them. Like, you could see there was the one scene in the cabin earlier where all of us were fighting like 2 deadites or whatever, and it was just insanity. Like, you could not tell what was going on at all. You have heavy and light attacks, and then you also have a finisher that you click on the right stick to execute. Once they get down, their health gets down to a certain level, an icon will pop up above their heads, and you hit R3 to execute them. And it's just like a mad dash. Everyone's just clicking their right stick trying to get their finisher move in. You never know if you're the one who's going to get it. Another thing about this game, it's another first come, first serve game where the first person who gets to whatever there is gets it, and then there's nothing. I played some matches in this where I got to the end, and I still only had like a sledgehammer. Like, I had no guns, no anything. The guns in this game, the aim is weird. It doesn't even feel like they're firing. Like, there's no force feedback in the controller, really. The enemies don't really react when they get shot. You can't see, like, blood flying off of them when you shoot them.
They do all seem to kind of be damage sponges.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, the guns, I ended up using melee in this almost all the time. Even though guns seem to work okay, it just felt better using the melee weapons. And then the other thing, too, is that you find power-ups in this throughout the world called Pink F. And mid-match, you can level up your character. You can level up how much melee damage they do. You can level up how much gun damage that they do. And there's probably 8 different categories for each character. I've never had a match last long enough that I got more than like a few points in like 3 or 4 different categories. But conceivably, if the matches eventually last longer on different maps, maybe, you'd have the ability to kind of build your character mid-match. I didn't get much of a chance to do that. Weapons don't break. I do appreciate that. Because in a lot of games like this, a lot of times your weapons will break after a while and you have to go find another one. Maybe they did that because of the first come, first serve nature of getting the weapons. I don't know. You also find cans of soda that you can use to replenish your health. There were definitely times where I had no health in this and I just kept dying over and over again, and my teammates had to just keep reviving me over and over. It gets annoying. Because it can be hard to find like the soda cans to boost your health, and then you're just screwed. Because, as I said earlier, you can't stray away from the team because your fear level goes up and you get possessed, and then you end up getting stuck farther away. It's like a self-defeating cycle, essentially. So it almost is at loggerheads with itself. What else? Graphics, as you've seen, are okay. They're not great.
They look a lot better than Friday the 13th.
They do. Yeah, it's a huge step up on Friday the 13th. Dead by Daylight, maybe a little bit, not as much. but it's still not an amazing looking game. Some of the finishers are pretty gory and cool, but there aren't enough of them. Eventually you get really sick of them after a while. As I said, there's just 2 maps. There is a third coming, and it is the Kandarian, Castle Kandar is what it's called. But I think ultimately, the game just, in general, just feels like way too limited and too rigid because there's only that one game style where you do the same process of things over and over again, and there's only the 2 maps. It does start to become pretty repetitive pretty quickly. The uninteresting characters don't help, and again, I'm a huge Evil Dead fan, and it didn't really help me at all. Also,
to be fair, the Dead by Daylight characters have huge fan followings now, and they aren't anybody.
Oh, really?
All you need to do, they're making a dating game.
Are you kidding me?
No,
with the characters from
with the characters from Dead by Daylight.
That's funny.
So if you catch on, it doesn't matter whether
I guess
whether
not.
anybody knows.
The one thing I would say though is his one-liners are all missing. Like I don't know if those. Maybe you know this, Matt. Are those separate copyrights or something?
I mean, part of the problem is probably that most of his one-liners are known as Duke Nukem lines now. Like a lot of that. But like I don't know. Like that shouldn't be a separate copyright. No. You could even just get away with the fact saying like they're pop culture references. Really. Is Bruce Campbell doing voices in this? Yeah. I don't know then.
It's weird, but yeah, like all his famous sayings, like they repeat like the same one over and over again. Which I was like, what? Like, he has like 10 that I remember anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say you'd want Hail to the King and Groovy and Good Bad, I'm the Guy with a Gun. You could cycle through a lot of them.
You hear Groovy a lot.
The real problem would be figuring out things for the other characters to say.
Yeah. I mean, they do have famous lines, and like the single-player missions, you hear some of that stuff. Like the one girl, like, in one of the missions, her head is like attached to your hip, and all she does is just fire off like all her lines from the movie.
Yeah, and maybe more of the lines will show up with the new map because most of those lines are from Army of Darkness.
That's true. Where it went to more of a comedic angle. Yeah,
Give
that's
me
true.
Some Sugar Baby. Like all
that's a good point.
Like all that stuff is from that one.
That's true.
The one everybody remembers.
Yeah.
I mean, part of that's because Evil Dead 1 and 2 did not have distribution, even on the level of.
Oh, they were indie films. Yeah.
I remember.
And most people, just let's be honest, didn't want to watch gore like that.
No, I mean, most people just didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I watched them back in the day. I didn't, but then, like, I remember Army of Darkness had ads in comic books. Like the back covers of all the comic books for like 2-3 months was the Army of Darkness poster. And I remember 2 things about it. First, I remember thinking, is that Evil Dead related? Because that looks like the guy from Evil Dead, which is bad when that's my reaction. I'm like, is that even? And I didn't realize it was Evil Dead 3 until I saw it.
Yeah.
And 2, I remember showing my girlfriend at the time who was a fundamentalist Christian, and she basically was like, I'm not seeing that. And I was like,
not gonna happen.
One of the most trouble I ever got in was when I tried to show her Warlock.
Oh, geez.
You remember that movie?
Yeah.
Was
it's all about
Julian
like,
Sands?
Yeah. I can see why.
Because she was into like the devil's like supernatural stuff. I'm like, oh, you'll like this because Satan loses or something. But as soon as he started using the eyeballs to like find his way through things, she left the room and wouldn't.
Oh yeah, I can see that. Yep.
Her dad liked it a lot. Though.
Yeah. And honestly, like I'm a huge fan of the films, but I only feel like it helped a little bit. Like I don't feel like it really ingratiated me to the game all that much.
No, theme only takes you so far.
Yeah. I mean, it just got repetitive. No matter how much I like Evil Dead, I couldn't shirk the fact that I was doing the same things over and over again.
That's how I felt playing multiplayer in Transformers.
Yeah. I can see that.
Or Transformers Devastation. Like, I'm sorry, I really like what you're doing presentationally, but I have done the same combo on the same robot 4,000 times, and I got like a slightly better axe out of it, and I have better things to do with my life.
Yep.
So yeah, no, that's a problem with just about anything that has like that kind of limited scope, and the theming is sort of being pasted onto, an already successful idea.
Yeah.
Which is definitely what's happening here, and there's frankly, I would not attempt to compete with the Dead by Daylight thing. Like it feels like you're up against a monolith with that, but and it feels like Evil Dead is probably not the key to that.
I do
puzzle.
wonder, like, how many. Like, I'm looking at the chat here, and it doesn't seem like a lot of people in the chat really know much about Evil Dead because it is an old IP. I mean, the TV show from 2015 that helped a little bit, but
I mean, that's probably the best. I mean, if you were a film nerd horror person in the 80s and early 90s, you definitely know what Evil Dead is.
Yeah.
And like,
they did remake it recently too, and I thought that was okay.
I didn't see that, but and certainly like, I introduced a lot of people I knew to at least Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness when Sam Raimi was the guy doing Spider-Man, and everyone's like, oh, this guy. I'm like, well, you watch the thing, sort of like when Peter Jackson did Lord of the Rings, and I was like, oh, you want to see his old stuff? Well, we're gonna watch Bad Taste and Meet the Feebles, and you're never gonna trust me on a movie recommendation again. Like, it's a weird. It was a weird. Like, you remember what I said about like the first decade of the 2000s being like that weird liminal space. Like, the two biggest revolutions in film at that time were directed by two horror schlock indie directors who I would argue peaked with both of those movies and never made something particularly great again.
Yeah, it's funny.
Like Sam Raimi and Peter Jackson getting Spider-Man and Lord of the Rings was just like the perfect project for both of those directors at the exact right time.
At that time, yeah.
Like, you had, it was exact Raimi's sensibility, Raimi's complete lack of fear of camp and schlock to make the Silver Age Spider-Man the way he did.
Yeah.
Because that was the trick with Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi was the first guy to direct a comic book movie who grew up loving comic books.
Right.
Like, he was the first one to be like, why would I change all this stuff when it already works?
It's great.
Yeah, and like, he set that tone for, I mean, you don't get the MCU without the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans.
I mean,
whatever you think of how they age, and I don't think they aged tremendously well.
You could argue that Spider-Man movie set the whole superhero thing in motion.
It did. That and X-Men.
Yeah.
Spider-Man set in motion the idea that you can just take the stuff from the comics and it'll work on screen. And X-Men set the tone of like, oh, people don't need to have heard of this stuff if you make it cool.
If it's good. Yeah.
X-Men was a year before Spider-Man.
Yeah.
People forget that. I did
forget that, actually.
Yeah, I still, because I was working at 24 Fitness in Thousand Oaks when that came out, and I remember asking people I was working with, like, who's going to go see X-Men this weekend? And everyone's like, why would anyone want to go see that garbage? And I was like, oh, and
just wait.
How the turntables, lads.
That's funny. This game is $40, which to
That's
me
a lot
is too much. Yeah, it's steep. And
this feels like a wait for the inevitable Halloween PS Plus giveaway.
Yeah, it's a little too much. And there is a season pass coming with 4 DLC packs. Now, if they were going to charge $40 and you get 4 DLC drops, that seems fair to me. Like, I'd be okay with someone paying $40 knowing you're getting 4 drops.
Yeah, you're getting some support in there.
But paying extra for... No way. No way. You can't launch a game with 2 maps, and there will be a third shortly, for $40. The single-player campaign is 5 missions, and they do make them, like, cheaply difficult towards the end to, like, make them last longer than they should. But you still can finish, like, all the missions in, like, an hour. Like, it doesn't take that much time. And they're not great anyway. It's like I just played them so I could unlock stuff to use in the 4v1 modes. And that's it. There's no other modes or anything.
You know what I would like a version of this, this subgenre that I would actually be interested in trying if someone was ambitious enough to make it, would be Nightmare on Elm Street. And except Freddy's got the ability to do crazy, weird dream logic shit. Like if everything was just completely crazy, like
surreal,
if you could mess with stuff like way more in terms of what the reality and the kind of things. Like, if you could do some Psychonauts level stuff, with that, like, that would be more interesting to me.
Or just what about a superhero one?
Yeah,
where like you play as like the beyond. One person plays as like the Beyonder or something, and then everyone else plays as 4 superheroes. Like you can. There's room to do stuff with this model for sure.
I think, and who knows what they got in the works, because they're about, the MCU is about to get into Kang,
right?
The Conqueror, who there's about 5 or 6 different versions of him through time, and they don't even get along with each other, and like they're all in different time periods, and they jump between time periods. You could definitely do like an Avengers game that used Kang as the demon kind of character in this, and have a wide variety of things you had. I mean, because you're talking about things as wide as having him be Rama-Tut in ancient Egypt versus like Immortus in the far future versus Iron Lad in the present. Like, there's a ton of stuff you could do with that. That like would not feel like the same thing over and over again. You could even have each time period have its own set of objectives. So yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea, and like you could really tweak the powers to work that way. But we're gonna have to get through that XCOM thing first.
Yep. So I did enjoy my time with this, and if you're an Evil Dead fan like me, and I'm sure there's probably 3 people who are like Evil Dead as much as I do who are going to watch this episode. But if you are like me, like it's borderline worth the $40 because there just haven't been Evil Dead games.
GX Gear, the boys version of this, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
You could do the Homelander as a bad guy.
That would work.
You could keep the gore too.
Yeah. Yep. Erebus says they already did that with Lego Marvel Superheroes 2. Is he joking?
I mean, Kang is a villain in that.
Right, but is there a 4v1 mode in there?
Not that I know of, but I didn't play a lot of that.
Yeah. But anyway, even for big Evil Dead fans like me, I really struggle to say that this is worth the money that they're asking. $40 is a lot for this game.
$40 is a lot for that.
I would not be surprised if eventually this game comes to PlayStation Plus or Game Pass or some way where you can get it for free or Epic Game Store gives it away.
I mean, I don't think it's going to be too long before this is 20.
Yeah.
At the very least.
Yeah. And then maybe they'll be like, oh, you know what? We made our money at launch, and now we're going to make some money off of our DLC so we can lower the base price. I don't know. I would sit tight for now. The game just came out on Friday. No early reviews, by the way, which is weird because it's not that bad. Like, this isn't a typical game that doesn't get pre-launch reviews. I don't know if it was a server issue or what. Like, they wanted people to review it on live servers. And I'll say this, too. The game does have tons of people playing it. There's no problems getting games at all. They're fast, too. There's cross-play for all platforms. The player pool is plenty big enough to get games very quickly. So there's not a lot of downtime between games, which is good. But $40 is just a little stiff. If it was $30, I would probably recommend it for most players. But as it is right now, it's just a little too steep for my blood. But there you go. Evil Dead, the game. And Matt, there just hasn't been Evil Dead games.
No, I mean, not good ones.
I mean, there just hasn't been, really. Fistful of Boomstick is from when? 2005 or 2006?
Somewhere in there, yeah.
There haven't been many since.
Was that the one with Mini Ash?
Yeah, I believe so.
Was it? Because there were 2 back then. I remember 2.
Yeah. But it's been a long time.
The one with Mini Ash really killed it for a while.
Yeah. Yep. So,
the whole IP was dormant for a long time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Much to my chagrin. I mean, it's still crazy that there's only 3 mainline films in that series after all this time. I mean, it's been 50 years? What year was the first Evil Dead release? 77, maybe?
It was later than that.
Was it later?
It was definitely later.
Was it at the 80s?
It was an 80s movie. Yeah.
81, maybe.
Raimi's not that much older than us.
81 maybe for the first Evil Dead. So you're still looking at 40 some years that IP has been around. There's only 3 films, mainline films.
Yeah.
That's
81 and then 2 was 87.
6 years. I didn't realize there was 6 years between the first and second. And then he just remade the first one. That's really bizarre. And added jokes like the eyeball. I swallow your soul. I swallow your soul. All right, let's move on.
What you may be thinking of it from the 70s is Sam. He did a short film called Within the Woods in 1978, which expanded out into Evil Dead.
Which was his precursor, yeah. Actually, if you go and read like the stories about the making of the Evil Dead, it's an interesting story because they're in this little dinky town and they're like in this little town like trying to buy all this stuff to make gallons and gallons of blood, and the people in the town are like, what are you doing? F is going on out there? Like,
and there's like all this, they putting Bruce Campbell through all kinds of hell. But he knew, it's just like, oh, this is what we got to do. Get this done.
They hated it. The actors hated it.
Well, but they knew they had to get out of there.
Yeah. Yep. So, it's an interesting story. Yep. Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk next about bad news. Particularly bad news if you're an Xbox fan and you only have an Xbox. Bethesda announced this week that its 2 biggest games that it has in development, both Starfield and Redfall, have been delayed out of 2022, Matt. 2 of my top 3 games for my draft are gone. It's over.
Yeah.
Unless God of War ends up delayed. That's it. That's my only chance.
There's a possibility there.
I'm starting to think it's a good possibility now.
I don't know about that, but like the I mean, this is Redfall doesn't shock me. There's a reason Redfall was my last pick.
Yeah.
So this is officially both of my alternates are used on the fantasy team.
Yep. I am now officially out of game.
Yeah. Starfield is like, I don't think anybody's super shocked at this, but I think we were all hoping it wasn't going to happen.
It's like nothing is sacred anymore. You can put a release date in your flipping trailer, and that doesn't mean anything. There's just, it's insane, Matt. I've literally lost almost half of my team.
Yep.
And I thought I was drafting crazy conservative.
I didn't. But
really?
No, it's not some of that stuff. I mean, Starfield, like I said about Zelda, same thing. Like, there's no reason not to think it's not coming.
Yes.
And you have to take it. Like, you have to go for it. Like, you can't just say, like, oh, I'm going to place my bet that this is not going to come out and not take it in the draft. Like, you can't do that. If you have a shot at getting Zelda, and there's even like a 50% chance Zelda comes out this year, you got to do it. And the same thing with Starfield. Like, it's just, you know, bad luck. God of War, same thing could happen with God of War. We don't know. But I don't think so.
I don't trust any game at this point, Matt. None.
I trust Cory Barlog way more than I trust Todd Howard.
It was 420, Matt, whenever he made that statement. So
nah, I don't know what the deal. And also, like, you know, we may be in a position where Microsoft is like, maybe you would have released this in this state,
and it would,
but we own you now. And now we're
you may be right. I mean, but you'd think that Microsoft would have its finger on the pulse of development and not let it make a trailer with the release date in it.
Well, that kind of happened before that all went down. I mean,
did it?
Before
did this trailer come before the acquisition?
They would have been working on this before that, yeah.
Huh. Right there it is. 11/11/22.
Well, I'm sure they'll do something.
There it is.
They'll do something on 11/11/22.
Here's me flipping off the screen right now with the 11/11/22 on it.
Well, they'll do something on 11. Do like a big gameplay drop and say like, no, that's what. See, that was what 11/11/22. You get to see your first gameplay. But we didn't say release date.
Oh my god, dude, it sucks so bad. And what is going on over there, Matt, at Xbox?
You know, that's the nature. As
it has nothing.
As Gabe Newell said when asked about Half-Life 3 15 years ago, these things take time.
I mean, there's no exclusives for Xbox this entire year.
No. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Unless Hellblade makes it, but we haven't seen...
They haven't even shared a release date for that at all.
No.
What a disappointment after last year.
Maybe we'll get Forza finally.
I mean...
Not going to move the needle, but like...
Well, there's rumors swirling that there is a Gears of War collection coming, and that it's going to come before the end of the year. And that is...
I can't think of...
Is that supposed to be some kind of saving grace?
I can't think of many things I want to do less than play all the Gears of War games again. But...
Right. Like, who hasn't played all the Gears games at this point? They've been on Game Pass. Like, why? Is there a need for a Gears collection? You could just play them all on Game Pass.
I think they want to do like a Master Chief collection, sort of unified thing with it.
I get it. That's not going to move the needle. That's not going to save this year for Xbox.
What? Vincent, the Obsidian RPG is probably this year? You mean Avowed?
Avowed?
Not a chance in hell that game comes out
I would
this
be
year.
really shocked.
Not a chance in hell.
And we haven't seen it played yet.
Yeah, we have nothing from that. That game is a long way
We have one
off.
trailer.
It ain't Elder Scrolls a long way off, but it's a ways off.
Yeah,
We're right back to the same 3 games we've been getting from Xbox
Here
forever.
we are again. Maybe we'll get Forza.
Halo came out and Halo's broken and we don't know how to fix it.
Yeah.
And Gears, we might throw more Gears at you even though you don't really care about it. And
Anymore.
Forza might come out if you happen to notice.
Yeah, it's the same crap all over. After last year, which had a great year for Xbox. We gave it Platform of the Year for last year, and then it just falls on its face this year.
Mm-hmm.
And look, obviously Game Pass is a Band-Aid for Xbox more than other platforms have, but still... Damn, dude, you don't have a single big release the entire year? That's inexcusable. You can't do that. You're the second year of your console. You can't do that.
I mean, they're gonna. There's still a lot of stuff to play on it thanks to the third-party support, but like, yeah.
I mean, honestly, Matt, there isn't a lot to play from third parties either. This year, Matt.
Not right now.
Matt, this year is shaping up to be one of the worst years of game releases in a really long time.
We don't know what comes out in the fall yet.
We do. There's nothing. Everything has been delayed out of the year.
We're about to go through some announcements in June. There's other stuff coming.
I mean, maybe. I mean, if you're counting on that.
Not Starfield, but like...
I mean... Right now, I'm looking at like Saints Row as being one of the biggest games left for 2022. Yeah, I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah, there's more stuff in the pipeline.
I don't know, man.
Certainly from Nintendo. We don't know anything about Nintendo's plans back then.
Yeah, I mean, Nintendo's just in full stride. Like, it's going to have software, but...
It's moving games up.
How big of a deal is like Nintendo Switch Sports and
No, but Nintendo's got to have a couple things in the barrel for the fall.
You mean stuff that we don't know about?
Yeah.
I'd be surprised.
I wouldn't.
This late in the game for Switch, I'd be really
surprised.
surprised.
Pokemon. I mean, there's Pokemon coming, and there's probably like
another remake.
Yeah, but that Pokemon fans don't care. There's probably another thing in there. I think there's got to be one more thing in there. Splatoon 3 probably, I guess.
That's already confirmed.
Yeah, the rumor was they've swapped Splatoon and
that's coming this year for sure. But that's announced. We know about it.
Yeah, I think there's stuff we don't know about yet. We'll see.
It's looking grim, really grim. Like just trying to do a podcast every week for the rest of the year. I'm like, damn, dude. Like, what are we going to be talking about? Like, I looked ahead at June and it doesn't look much better than April or May. This is a rough year, and it's the second. This is generally when consoles hit their stride. The second year of a console is usually when you start becoming overloaded with exclusives.
But usually that doesn't happen in the middle of a pandemic. So,
I mean, Redfall, I'll admit, when you drafted it, I was like, oh, that one's not coming out. But
yeah, those are good. I mean, Redfall was a Hail Mary. Because I figured that wasn't going to make it. But I might as well put it in there in case it did, and I got an alternate if it doesn't. So.
I wouldn't be surprised if this game also gets delayed from next spring, because we should have mentioned, by the way, that Bethesda is saying both games will come out early next year.
I think this game is further out than Starfield.
I agree. Although there has been like betas of this game already that people have played. There's been some small leaks coming out of that stuff.
For some reason, I feel like this thing gets dumped in June or something.
Maybe.
Like it's a kind of one of those weird summer.
That would be great.
Releases.
I would love to have a game like Redfall to play right now. Or last month, or the month before that. But it's just crazy. COVID.
Would have been nice to be playing Forspoken right now.
Yeah. It's just funny how initially studios, publishers were like, oh, COVID's not that big a deal. We're working from home, and it took us a month or two to figure it all out, and now we're chugging. It's been way worse than they were leading on. All these games being delayed. Like, I've never seen anything like this. Ever. Usually it's one or two big games that get delayed out of the year, and people are bummed about it. This year, there's been so many, you can't even focus on one that you're supposed to be bummed out about. I'm just bummed in general. Like, I don't know, man.
What are the others other than...
Zelda, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, Zelda was never a guarantee. But
it's only been in development for 6 years.
Yeah, well, it's Nintendo. It's done when it's done.
Yeah.
Starfield is the biggest disappointment of delays for me, just because that's completely up my alley and I want to see what it is, you know. But at the same time, I can wait until it's closer to not horrible. You know, like I was very much expecting that to come out broken, basically.
Yeah, like most other open world RPGs.
Yeah, and there's a couple, there's a bunch of there's stuff that's even the stuff that is coming out is not particularly interesting to me. Like even stuff that should be interesting, like. I cannot express to you how much I do not want to play Gotham Knights after watching that reveal video.
Oh, really?
Like, that game looks like garbage. That combat looks like garbage.
Yeah.
It's mushy.
I know. And you haven't even played it yet. You can just tell by looking at it.
You can look. And it's like, I mean, I know it's not technically an Arkham game, but are you really? Like, we've waited 7 years for a damn follow-up to one of the best little trilogies in the history of... I mean, I didn't like Arkham Knight, but, like, I'm not going to say that Arkham Knight's combat felt bad. Like, and I just don't get it. I
don't know how you can't get that right, or at least recognize that it's bad, because we noticed that when we saw the first gameplay of it.
It was early on. You're like, oh, there's a lot of time.
Right. We were like, oh, there's plenty of time to
fix
fix
it. They showed was just no.
Yeah.
No.
I know.
No.
I know, man.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Like, that was above Suicide Squad for me, because like I just don't find the Suicide Squad like concept or the lineup they have very interesting. But
that's another game that was delayed out of the year.
But Gotham Knights, like, just no, like
it's not looking good
unless something drastically changes between when they recorded that demo and what the thing they put out. Like that game looks like it's wandering into like Avengers territory to me.
What does this do to sales of Xbox, if anything at all?
Probably nothing.
These delays do nothing?
No, I mean,
you think
they're being outpaced
Game Pass can patch over that?
No, I mean, I'm saying they're being outpaced by PlayStation 5, and they're fairly readily available on shelves. So it's like they're just sort of going to sit, things have kind of leveled off a little bit for Xbox sales.
Yeah.
PlayStation 5 is still selling like you can't keep it in stock more than an hour.
I mean, the easy way to check
Granted,
that.
there's fewer of them, but
as Pactor pointed out to me, the easy way to check that is just go on eBay and see how much they're going for on eBay. And all Xboxes now are going for retail, maybe $25 over retail. Yeah. And PlayStation 5 are still $700-800.
Yeah, they're plentiful.
Yeah. It's weird even evaluating Xbox anymore because of Game Pass. It's just very difficult to figure out how things that used to have a big impact on their business may not have an impact at all now. It's interesting. It's a total changing of the guard. And maybe it will save Microsoft's ass because you're right, Matt. This is just a repeat of what we went through for like 9 years straight with Xbox exclusives, where you're just begging for one of the 3 games to come out.
And eventually they will have a much more varied library coming out from all these people they've acquired, but like it's just not happening yet.
Yeah. Let's go to the chat and see what people are saying. We haven't gone to you guys much in 300 because it's just been a kind of different kind of episode. The cat game Stray will be Game of the Year from Congrim. Hey, it's on my fantasy team. That would be awesome.
I don't really expect Stray to be out this year.
Really?
No.
Really? Because that's supposed to be out like in Q1.
Yeah.
Really?
We'll see like if we see more of it in the next month, like in the kind of the pseudo E3 space.
Yeah.
Maybe show up on the Summer Games Fest or something. But the fact that we haven't heard a peep out of that game makes me think that something's.
Don't say that, Matt. At this point, I've actually kind of given up, so it doesn't really matter. Well, let's see. ETH Demon, my end of the year is Pokemon. That Pokemon remake. Like, are you really excited? Like, you can't wait till the end of the year till you can play that Pokemon remake? Like, I don't know. Saints Row, Forspoken, Midnight Suns. Are those the big games for the rest of the year?
Yeah, more or less.
Mr. Starwalker, I didn't pick Breath of the Wild 2 in my draft. I picked Starfield only because it was in the trailer and was the only Microsoft game for the fall. It was literally the only game. Like, they had one job, Matt. One job. Get Starfield done. Throw 5,000 people at Starfield if you have to get it done.
I don't think it really works that way.
Obviously not, because you'd think that they probably would have if that were the case, but apparently not.
I mean, it's Bethesda. Don't ever expect that. You know, I'm sure Bethesda would have announced closer to release if they were allowed to, but like you just had that thing where they announced Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6. How many years ago was that? When was that? When did Fallout 76 come out? What was that, 2017, 2018?
18, I think. Yeah.
Because, I believe without any doubt in my mind that they showed Starfield and Elder Scrolls that year because they knew Fallout 76 was going to be what it was. They had to distract you and give you something else to look forward to. And what that means is they have to kind of feed the beast every once in a while, and that's what they did with that trailer. And maybe they were pretty sure that was going to come out. They were going to have it done in some form by then, but just didn't. That's development.
Vincent mentioned a couple things. First, he says Stray was highlighted in an indie reel from Sony, so that's encouraging. And he also brings up something I totally forgot, is that this year's Pokemon is actually not a remake. It is Gen 9.
Because the remake already came out.
Yeah.
That was the Alpha, not Alpha.
Right.
Diamond and Pearl.
Yep. Yeah, so, okay. Looks like you guys aren't too worried about it. You guys aren't chatting about it much, so you guys must not be too concerned about it. I know we have a lot of Xbox fans.
Oh, I'm not forgetting Hogwarts Legacy. I'm going to forget about it, but I'm not.
That is going to come out this year, actually.
I think, from what I understand, Gotham Knights and Hogwarts Legacy are hell or high water this year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they need those out.
Because they don't know if they're going to go away.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going to happen to that whole business before it's all said and done. So
basically, I think they're clearing the decks before they sell everybody off.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be possible. Or make it easier to sell. Yeah. You would think you would want to keep those projects unreleased to juice the deal, because it's like, hey, if you buy us, we have these 2 games that are just about ready to come out.
Because if you're buying, then all that means is you're on the hook for distribution.
Right.
It's just like, we got to spend more money to make these things, distribute these things, and promote these things that we didn't even have a say in making or what they are, and they might not be successful, and that wouldn't even be our fault. Yeah. No, you want to clear the deck.
You'd also probably end up delaying the game again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which at this point, neither of those games should be delayed again at this point, so there you go. That's the latest on Xbox. It's not encouraging at all, but there is a Band-Aid element to Game Pass, but I'll be honest, Matt, like I haven't used Game Pass that much in the last couple months. It's just kind of sat there.
I've used it for a few indie things.
I played Trek to Yomi, and that was bad.
I installed that but didn't actually play it.
Ugh.
I played a couple things. Can't remember what now.
But I haven't been using it that much. I've started to question, like, should I cancel my subscription? Because as I've mentioned in prior episodes of GameFace, I'm up against it financially, so I'm starting to look at places I can tighten the belt a little bit. And
that's the only way to get your free download of Gears of War Collection come this fall.
Exactly. But seriously, though, I mean, to me, a big selling point of Game Pass is day one exclusives, and there aren't any.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm starting to question whether I'm going to cancel my subscription. We'll see. And they almost make it too easy to cancel and like start it again too. I've already had my free trial where I got it for $1 for a few months. That's not going to happen again. Like, maybe time to cut the cord a little bit on Xbox Game Pass. We'll see. But anyway, that's the latest on Xbox and Bethesda, and none of it is good news. Let's move on. We're going to talk next about Mass Effect 4. Some information leaked.
Speaking of things that are a long way off.
Yeah, speaking of things that may be 3 or 4 years off still. But a leak came out this week suggesting that Shepard is going to return for Mass Effect 4. How do you feel about that, Matt?
I don't think there's anything more predictable imaginable.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I thought the whole thing with this was that they were going to move on.
Well, no, one of the only things we know concretely about this game is that Liara is looking for Shepard. And Liara doesn't go on wild goose chases too often. So if she's looking for Shepard, there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the destroy ending of Mass Effect 3 is going to be canon, where it's shown that Shepard is still alive.
Are you excited for this?
No.
Are you glad? Did you want them to turn the page and start new?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, at least this one has the characters and all is in the galaxy. You know, like the problem with Andromeda was it shouldn't have been a Mass Effect game.
Agreed.
It just didn't.
I agree with that.
It didn't use the universe. It didn't use the characters. It didn't have any.
And I believe the game would have been much better received if it were not a Mass Effect game.
It might be a new IP they could use now if it was something. Just call it Andromeda and have all new things, and like then you're not being compared to Mass Effect all the time.
Yep. Yeah, that crushed it being a Mass Effect game.
Terrible choice.
Yeah, because I actually enjoyed playing that game, but did I enjoy it as a Mass Effect game? No, I did not.
I mean, Shepard is obviously not going to be who you're playing. He's not going to, Shepard is going to be out there somewhere. Shepard's the MacGuffin, basically. Everyone's going to be looking for Shepard, but that's not going to be what the story's about.
Yeah.
That's what I'm guessing.
Yeah. I mean, obviously for financial reasons.
I mean, look, we got the legendary collection of Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3. That's the definitive version of those games. That's all I care about. Like anything else, like if they happen to make a good 4, awesome. If not, I don't care. Like,
how confident are you that Mass Effect 4 is going to be a good game?
0. Like, I don't have any confidence in anything EA does anymore.
I mean, I wouldn't go 0, but I'd put it at like 30% maybe.
Like, I don't even know if this game gets made.
Really?
Yeah,
you think it may just get canned?
If Dragon Age 4 doesn't hit big, and that's definitely coming before that, and that's still a year or more away.
We still haven't seen gameplay of that.
They're saying summer 2023 at the absolute most optimistic for that.
I would guess Q4
later.
2023.
If we're lucky, probably more like Q1 2024.
Really? They've been working on that one for a long time already.
I think they've probably torn it down and built it back up 3 or 4 times by now.
Yeah.
Because that game's got to sell. Like that. If Dragon Age is a bomb. Or whatever.
BioWare's in deep doo-doo.
Yeah, I don't know if BioWare survives long enough to finish Mass Effect 4.
Because it is EA. Let's not forget. EA is not afraid to close down studios.
As a matter of fact, EA has been most patient with BioWare's continued existence of almost any other acquisition
That's a good point.
Had.
It's out of the ordinary. By now, EA would have completely killed BioWare. I think it knows, though, when it does that, and I hate to say if and say when, but when it does that, people are going to freak out. Even if...
Well, also, like, if they do that... What do they have?
I know.
They got Respawn and Madden and FIFA, and not even FIFA anymore. They got EA Football Club or whatever.
Yep.
And Battlefield. And that's it.
And Battlefield's in the trash bin right now.
Yeah.
I don't
know.
EA
doesn't have... You want to talk about, EA's Microsoft level barren.
It is.
In terms of, like, stuff to put out.
Yep.
It's incredible.
It is incredible.
If they didn't have Respawn, they would be 3 franchises.
Well, yeah, if they didn't have Apex Legends bringing in $1 billion a year, they'd be screwed.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm looking forward to
Screwed.
stuff Respawn makes.
Yeah.
And
other than that,
I will tentatively keep an eye on Dragon Age and Mass Effect, but like, do I have any expectations of those? No, of course not. I mean, the people who made BioWare an amazing game developer back in the day don't work there anymore for the most part.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sure everybody's doing their absolute best, but you can only do so much with what EA gives you.
It's just, to me, Matt, it's just really astonishing just how, in general, so fewer games are being released in general. Like, there's just...
Well, that's what happens when they cost $200 million.
It's crazy. Is that the right direction to go?
I mean, it's the only direction to go with the myth of infinite growth. Like, that's what the thing is. Like, everything's got to be bigger. Everything's got to sell more than last time. Everything's got to be better than last time. You can't just settle in, like, this is how much money we make every year. This is our revenue. This is our profit off of, you know, on top of our operating costs. That's how much money this company makes every year.
Yeah.
And no one can be satisfied with that. Everything has to be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. You can't just settle in and be like, this is what we do. This is how much money we're worth. This is how much money we make every year. And this is how much money we make our stockholders every year. Like, no one's happy with that.
Yeah.
Like, everything has to infinitely grow, and that's unsustainable.
It is
and everybody's
unsustainable.
running into that right now, especially as you're wandering into the, you know, the HD era made the cost of that even worse. And now you're hitting a point where it's like, yeah, like, if you expect Dragon Age 4 to sell 15 million copies, you're out of your fucking mind.
Yeah.
Like, it might, if it's like one of the greatest RPGs ever. made. Is it going to be one of the great? Probably not.
Yeah. Because many have tried, many have failed.
No, like
most have tried, most have failed.
Like, you're not gonna, and even the thing, that's the other thing, is like people, you know, especially like EA, I'm sure, is like, well, I mean, BioWare makes some of the greatest RPGs ever. Like, yeah, Baldur's Gate 2 is a great RPG. Would Baldur's Gate 2 sell 15 million copies now? No, this stuff is temporal.
Yeah.
Baldur's Gate 2 would barely be an indie game by today's standards.
You're right. Yep.
Like,
what's the end game here, Matt? What's going to happen?
I mean, BioWare closes.
I mean, just not BioWare. I'm saying that the industry in general, it just doesn't feel like this is sustainable at all. Do you think the big publishers start releasing smaller, cheaper games eventually?
No, I think the big publishers, you know, serve the stockholders to the point that they drive their own companies into the ground, get acquired by the bigger hardware manufacturers that do not have the tenuous hold on revenue that they do. And other companies grow to fill those, you know, AAA niches, and maybe have smarter people who are running the show this time. Because part of the problem is that you've got people calling these shots, especially from the financial angle, that like don't understand how games work. They don't understand how the market works. They don't understand all they see is numbers. They just want the number. You know, it's that NFT thing. Line goes up, right?
Yeah.
And look how that worked out.
Yep. Yeah. And Game Manual is bringing up a good point. It's like games as a service for everyone. Mm-hmm. Like, it just feels like that's where it's all headed, where every game is going to become this ongoing living thing.
But even
we're going to try to be.
But even that is something where you're just, you know, you're still constantly outputting cash to keep these things alive and moving and developed. And there's going to be a lot of casualties from that too, because, you know, we've seen what happens when a game as a service doesn't catch on.
Yeah.
And when a company is not willing to put the effort in to wait for it to catch on, you just pull the plug after.
They crash and burn fast.
Look what happened to Anthem.
Yep. The other thing too about these games as a service is like they don't have legs. If you shut them down, that's it. Mm-hmm. There's nothing to play. Yeah. It's like an all or nothing bet that you're making, and they're very expensive to make, and they take a long time to make. And it's not like you can lower the cost of them and make your money back in most cases. It doesn't work that way.
No, you're constantly laying out more money to keep keep people engaged, and unless you have a critical mass of engagement already, it's not sustainable either.
Yeah, you're throwing good money after bad. That's if you're dumb.
But then you're going to see
if you're smart, you just can it.
But I bet you when we see, you know, Fallen Order 2, which I think the title of that leaked.
Yeah.
Just Jedi something, Jedi Fugitive or something. I don't know.
It's hard to remember like all the different subtitles for Star Wars games at this point, because they all have Jedi in them some way. They're just rearranging the chairs on the Titanic at this point for the titles.
But like, you know, that's probably going to come out and sell 10 million copies.
Yeah.
Like, that should be good enough.
Yeah.
For anybody, you know, you could be putting out really high quality single player adventure stuff like that and be making that kind of money regularly.
Every 3 years, every 4 years.
Yeah, but if you get all your guys working together on these things,
and like you get them staggered,
you stagger them. You know, just what Microsoft's presumably trying to do. Mm-hmm. You got a good flow there.
Yeah.
And but everything has to be the biggest thing ever. You know, everything.
Yeah.
You know, everything. You know, it doesn't matter, and then you hit the point where as long as you hit those number targets, it doesn't matter whether the game was any good,
Right.
And then that leads to the next one selling lower because people don't trust it anymore, and then all the executives are like, well, what happened? It's like, well, what happened 4 years ago.
Yeah, you blew all their trust.
But you don't understand that.
Yep. Yeah. It's not going to a good place, I don't think, Matt.
Probably not.
I
mean, that's sort of all around, though. I mean,
Yeah.
you see that with almost every movie studio, too, except for Disney.
Yeah.
The Warner Brothers is not doing great either. They don't have a lot going on. You're looking at Sony, who's one of the reasons Sony is constantly pumping out like Spider-Man villain movies nobody cares about is because the only thing they got.
Yeah.
They basically. What else do they have? They like, share custody of Bond.
Right.
Like,
although I would argue that those villain Spider-Man movies do okay financially.
I mean, Venom did.
Yeah.
Morbius didn't.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And then now you got Craven coming up. I don't know if anybody cares
Who
about Craven.
cares?
And Madam Web. Madam Web is like, at some point you have to stop. You
That's
have
pathetic.
to stop doing that.
Yep. Vincent says Jedi Survivor. That's the
Jedi
title
Survivor,
of the
right.
new Fallen Order 2. Jedi Survivor. Yep. So anyway, there
Better
you go.
than being an outcast.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy how our discussion of Shepard being in Mass Effect 4 spun off into this other discussion, but that's how GameFace works. When we're sitting here kind of trying to sort through things and figure out what the bigger picture
As long as
is.
we're talking about like weird expectations for things,
Yeah.
like it's just, like the infinite growth myth is going to sink a lot of these companies because the stockholders and the people running these companies don't seem to understand that it is in fact a myth.
Imagine running Apple,
Mm-hmm.
where you have that expectation, and you already are just generating this amount of money that people can't even fathom.
Mm-hmm.
And if you come out and you have a financial report where you only like increase it by 25%, you watch everyone sells your stock.
Or it's like, oh yeah, our
crazy.
revenue is down 1.4%. It's like
Bail, sell all my
we're
stocks.
still making $300 million. Like it's like,
I know, it's bizarre, man. But a lot of it is stockholders. It drives a lot of this stuff, unfortunately. Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk next about something we've talked about before. And when we talk about it, we always assume maybe we wouldn't have to talk about it again. And here we are again. Once again, certain segments of the media are blaming video games for a mass shooting. There was a horrific mass shooting in Buffalo in the last few days where a guy drove a couple 100 miles into a neighborhood full of people of color and went into the supermarket and just started shooting people. Killed 10 people, I believe, was last count. 3 wounded, including shot the security guard who was in the store because the perpetrator had body armor on. And the security guard shot him. It bounced off of his body armor, and then he killed the security guard. And
Who was a retired cop.
And was a retired cop, exactly. And had only done that because he'd become bored. It's awful. Some of the stories of the people who were killed, like there was one woman who had been running like a soup kitchen for like 25 years to feed her neighbor. Like,
yeah, they all seemed like they were all really good people.
Yeah. And
like all the stories I've read about them were just like, oh my God.
It's just terrible. It's terrible. And so this is bad enough. But here come certain segments of the media who, and let's be honest, a lot of the media outlets that are doing this are the ones who also are very pro-gun, pro-Second Amendment, NRA, whatever, are now they're blaming video games on the violence. And Matt, I will say one thing that at least made me think. And I actually I can't remember where I saw someone mention this, is that the shooter live streamed on Twitch the shooting. And I did see someone say, and I kind of agree with this, is that he had put the camera on his gun. And if you watch the footage of that, if you're someone who doesn't play a lot of games and isn't tech savvy, it is kind of hard to tell the difference between the live stream of him actually shooting people and watching someone play a first-person shooter. Because
you put the camera behind the gun like that, that's what it's going to look like.
Right.
Usually when you're playing a video game, though, the gun doesn't have a bunch of Nazi shit written on it.
Right. Well, unless you're playing a Call of Duty game set in World War II.
Well, usually they don't have slogans written on the gun.
I understand what you're saying.
There wasn't a lot of ambiguity as to why he did this. I don't think Doom had anything to do with it.
No. I mean, it's asinine that they're blaming it on games. But the point that I was getting at is I can see how these news outlets could convince people like my mom or whatever, watching it to be like, damn, like I can't tell the difference between the real shooting and the video games. And I could see where, and my mom, it doesn't feel this way, by the way. I just want to say that. If she's watching this stream, she might be, since it's 300. She doesn't feel that way. She understands that, game violence and movie violence doesn't lead to violence in the real world. I'm just using her as an example, as someone who's older and retired and may look at the footage side by side and say, yeah, like...
And watches those channels.
Yeah, older folks generally. And may say, I can't see the difference. And then they make that jump of logic of, well, then, yeah, I could see where this would desensitize people to this stuff and make this kid think that he's just playing a video game while he's doing it. Again, all absurdities. But I can see where this angle now, as games have have looked more and more realistic, where that line is harder for uneducated people to draw anymore. How do you feel about this?
I don't care. It doesn't matter. There is a video game connection on this, but it's not that the footage looks like a video game. The connection is that if a kid is playing online games, they are inevitably being exposed to white supremacist propaganda and grooming. That is the video game connection.
Interesting.
I mean, that's true of almost any online space that you're going to end up, but it's especially true of video game stuff. You see it in all the lobbies. You see it in almost every kind of online game like that. It's near constant. It's like everything has become Baron's chat for neo-Nazis. So I guarantee you, if you have a kid who's playing online games, they have been exposed to this sort of thing, this sort of rhetoric. And that's where it starts. And then they end up on 4chan, and they end up on all that stuff. And that's how you end up live streaming yourself holding a gun with the N-word written on it while you shoot people in a supermarket. And leave this giant manifesto which quotes all the worst, like, extremist right-wing QAnon stuff you could possibly imagine. So yeah, the video games are a pretty minor factor in terms of being video games, but they are a vector to hearing this stuff for the first time. And that is how you get someone who's radicalized as a teenager. Because they're very good at that. Like, there's, it's a portal. It's a gateway into finding more of this stuff, basically. It has nothing to do with whether it looked like a first-person shooter. I think that's a red herring, but like almost every right-wing explanation for this stuff that avoids the gun issue is a red herring to begin with. So it's just another arrow in the quiver of nonsense and disinformation. And it's not going to affect anything as far as the video game industry goes. Like no serious people take that idea seriously.
What can we do to stop the radicalization of young people through video games? What can be done, if anything? I mean,
the only real solution is cracking down on the ability to communicate and talk to these kids like that. I mean, you have to moderate your chat and your stuff incredibly hard, and a lot of that is arguably impossible.
Better parenting? Is it going back to just better? It
does go back to know what your kids are playing, know what they're talking about, know what they're hearing. Talk to them about things like, don't confront them, but like, kind of be, I'm not a parent, so what am I talking about? But don't confront them. Don't be like, just be like, oh, I saw on the news this thing said this thing about, the 14 words or whatever. And like, what do you think about that? And if your kid says that he thinks that sounds pretty cool to him, you might want to sit down and have a chat.
Yeah.
Because he's been talking to some people online, I guarantee it.
Well, in the case of this shooter, of course, the parents were like, oh, I have no idea. But everyone else who talked about the guy was
all knew. I mean,
they knew he was
even the cops were lying about, knowing, unknown to law enforcement, but they'd investigated him in June last year for threatening to kill classmates.
Is that what it was?
That was one
he
of
had threatened to kill classmates?
He had talked about shooting classmates,
Oh.
And like they investigated him for that. But it's all, he was actively armed and had just murdered 10 people, and the cops just walked up and talked to him.
And they put I noticed that when they put their hand on his back.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God.
Because they weren't afraid of him.
Right.
That's why.
Right. That really struck me.
difference.
Watching how they handled that guy, I was like aghast. I was
that kid had been 5 shades darker, he wouldn't have been there.
He'd have been he wouldn't have been there, but he'd have been dead.
Yeah, and the cops would have just
shot him.
Fire.
Yeah, I fully believe that. It was disgusting watching how they treated him.
Mm-hmm. It reminded me. I can't remember the name of the guy. Was it Dylan
Roof, who they took to McDonald's?
Took to get a hamburger. Yeah.
I mean, this is a case though where it just comes back to just parenting. Because it's there. Like, if you go in his room and you look at his writings, he wrote this manifesto for months.
Right. Well, and also,
if you're a parent and you're
also
engaged,
brings up the question: do the parents disagree with him?
Right. Or is he getting it from the parents?
Yeah.
Right. That's another problem. But he seemed to come from an affluent family, which doesn't...
A lot of affluent families are like that. Remember the weirdos holding their guns on the protesters in that gated community? I mean, that this is not like a bunch of... everyone thinks about a bunch of trailer park y'all kada stuff. Like, a lot of this is upper class stuff. A lot of this is elitism.
It's like Get Out. The movie Get Out.
Yeah. It's definitely
That movie's
there.
freaked me out, by the way.
Jordan,
it's one of those movies that
Jordan
I've watched.
Peele makes such good horror because the horror is real shit.
I mean, it is.
I can't wait for Nope. Nope looks so good.
It does. But Get Out has shook me. It's something that has stuck with me for a really long time.
I think he wanted it to shake you. I mean, I think it shook him.
Yeah.
Like he's writing about some real stuff in that. From that you can tell that movie comes from the heart, or or the guts, or whatever you want to term it.
Do we bear some responsibility?
He's exercising some demons in that film, and it shows, and you can feel it.
Yeah. I feel that way with my own family sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my right-leaning family members, I feel like I'm in the movie Get Out.
Yeah, I don't have any of those, but I guess there are a couple, but we don't talk to them anymore.
It's weird.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I literally feel like I'm in, and I don't know if that's offensive to African Americans, which obviously that movie it's about.
Yeah.
But I feel at least a shade of what they're trying to portray in that movie, dealing with some of my right-wing relatives.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can see it from there if you're standing in the Get Out.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
No, I mean, obviously, I think Get Out is very much about racism, but also it wouldn't have been the widespread hit it was if it didn't resonate in a universal way too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the genius of it. Is it's about a specific thing, but it's also about a thing everybody's felt.
Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah.
That's great art.
Is the gaming industry culpable at all for any of this? Does it have does it need to start doing some of the things you were talking about?
I think it does need to start by paying more. Yeah, I think they do pay attention to what happens in chat and but it's a lot of times the damage is done. Like, you can't do anything if some guy was spamming a bunch of recruitment Nazi shit, and a couple kids give them their contact info, and now they can just talk to them. Like, there's maybe they got that through whatever game they were playing, but that's out of the game developers' hands at this point. And there's that is a conduit that you can't really control tremendously well. It does really come down to monitoring what your kids are doing more than anything else. One could argue that you could maybe just get rid of chat in video games, but that's probably a non-realistic
I mean, I would argue,
idea.
Matt, that voice chat has diminished.
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
it was in its heyday in the Xbox 360
You don't
era.
go into a game anymore and just hear chatter everywhere anymore.
People don't voice chat anymore.
Either people are in their own little groups, or everybody's just doing text.
And I'll be honest, I play a lot of competitive games, and there's a lot of games that I play where I'm like, I need voice chat. I need you guys to talk and help me, and we need to coordinate and form team tactics, but nobody does it anymore. It's just gone away. And I don't know why that is. Why is that, actually? Because even PlayStation 4 came with a headset packed in.
I think it's just too much of a pain.
Yeah.
I hate having to set that stuff and hope it works, and then it doesn't. It disconnects me. It's just not worth the time that was worth it was when the Xbox 360 just worked.
Yeah.
It just worked.
Yeah. You just plugged it in. And
you plugged it in. You joined the group. It was fine. It just worked. Or Discord. Why is Discord so popular? Because it just works. But Discord, you kind of already got to know people. You're already in a community there.
Right.
In terms of just joining a group with a bunch of strangers, that's really fallen out of favor.
I do think at the end of the day, it's still parenting. Because if a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, whatever kid is being exposed to racist language in chat during a game, that's not the kid's fault.
No.
That's the parent's fault. The parent is allowing their kid to play this game where they're chatting with other people. I have a sister and with a nephew, and he's a big Fortnite player, and he's constantly just arguing with people, and I've mentioned him actually in the last episode we did about how his grades are falling, and the school thinks it's all because of Fortnite. And then I actually, after the show, I talked to my sister, and I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, really, the problem is the chat. That he gets really angry with the people because the people who are chatting with him are telling him he's terrible at the game and blah, blah, blah. He's like 7, you know? Like, your emotions are so... You're not in control of them at that age. And the bigger problem...
You're probably not in control of your emotions if you're telling a 7-year-old they suck at a video game either.
Exactly.
So.
But I told her, I'm like, then don't let him play. Like, it's that simple. It's your job. It's because I could tell she's starting to take the angle of, like, you work in this industry, and look at what your industry is doing to my son. And I was like, no. This is your job.
If your kid plays baseball and is having a horrible time because the other players are making fun of him or, like, the coach is yelling at him, are you going to go complain to the MLB?
Yeah.
Like, that's not what happens there. You got to deal with you got to know your kid.
You're going to go picket the Louisville Slugger Company?
Yeah, you got to talk to the kids. You got to know what they're doing. You got to know what they're into. Like, even if it feels like you're prying, you know, and it certainly felt like I was being pried into when I was a teenager and stuff. But in retrospect, like, that's something you need to do. You got to know you don't have autonomy yet.
Yeah.
You're a kid. Yeah. And as a parent, you got to know what they're into and know what they're. I mean, at a certain point, you should probably notice if they're collecting that many guns,
right?
You know,
yeah.
Or like really want tactical gear for Christmas, like.
Or if they've been working on this piece of writing for the last 2 years or whatever, and it's like you've never read it and he's never talked to you about it. Yeah. It's like there are flags if you want to see them.
Yeah, monitor their online behavior.
You have to want to see them.
Yeah, monitor, set up stuff that basically spies on them.
Yeah.
Like, they don't have autonomy in that regard.
Yeah.
And usually I think most kids are not going to do anything horrible.
True.
There's a reason.
All it takes is one.
Yeah.
That's all it takes, as we just saw.
And again,
one person, one assault rifle.
And again, that's all it takes. Comes down to, like, I don't care what he was playing, this guy. I'm sure tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of other people play the same games he was playing, and none of them did this.
Right. Yeah.
If this is what caused that, this would happen more often from people from that walk of life and that vein of interest, and it doesn't any more than it does with anyone else.
Yeah.
Like, there's no constant trend of everybody who shoots up a supermarket or shoots up a school plays video games beyond the fact that almost everybody plays video games.
Yeah.
The unique part is that they killed people.
Everyone's just looking for someone to blame that's not them or connected to them.
Everybody's looking for something to blame that does not involve
work,
guns,
or guns,
passing gun law. Like,
right.
As The Onion says every time, nothing to be done about this, says only nation where this happens regularly.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't happen in Australia. It doesn't happen in Britain. It doesn't happen anywhere except here. And I don't know. Maybe it's just because we're different, but maybe the difference is the thing that's actually different, which is that everybody can get their hands on guns. I could go out right now and buy AR-15s easier than I could get a case of baby formula.
I know. But easier than you can get Sudafed.
Yeah.
And look, I here's the thing. Like, I grew up with guns. I grew up in a rural area where literally there were some years where we hunted for our food. Like, and we needed to hunt to have steak to eat for the rest of the year or whatever. Otherwise, my parents would never buy it. So I don't hate guns, but you do not need an assault rifle. You need a hunting rifle, a bolt action rifle where you put one bullet in at a time, and when it fires, you pop it out and put another one in. You need a shotgun, and you need maybe a handgun for protection at home. And that's a 6-shot handgun.
And really, probably shotguns are better for home defense anyway.
It probably is. And that's it. That's it. That's all you need. Even my friends who are crazy gun nuts, if I ask them, I'm like, why do you need an AR-15? And they'll tell me, I don't need it. I want it.
It's fun. It's a toy.
It's fun. It's a toy. Yeah. It's like they're not toys.
No. And I'll tell you, like, if somehow in some weird dream world, Transformers were responsible for murdering hundreds of thousands of Americans,
you get rid of that whole room of
I
Transformers.
would get rid of that whole room.
Yeah.
I would gladly turn in my Transformers to the police and say, get them out.
A lot of it comes down to a conscience. Do you have a conscience?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a very long streak of fuck you got mine in American culture that I don't know if we can ever overcome.
Yeah. Yep. I would love to go to chat because this is an interesting topic and you guys are talking about it. And it does appear that the vast majority of you guys agree with us. but we're out of time. We're running out of time. We still have one more topic, and I do hate to brush it off because it's important, and people are passionate about it.
It'll come back in the comments, I'm sure.
Well, what do you mean?
When you put the
the
episode
archive,
up.
you mean?
Yeah.
We'll have a chance to discuss it there. But anyway, all right, we do have to move on.
I have a lot of great takes from people with basic on their post.
Touche. All right, here we are, the last topic of GameFace episode 300, and what a journey this actual episode has been. There's never been another episode like this one. That's for sure.
300. This is sifted.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to talk about the game that Matt played this week, and it is Ayuden Chronicles Rising, which is a 2D action RPG that is I don't even know, honestly, the truth about this. I don't think it's a prequel. I think
it is.
It is a prequel.
It's a prequel side story thing, and some of the characters in this game are going to carry over into the final game.
Which is just Ayuden Chronicles,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
And I think like how much you build up the town in this is going to determine what the town is like in the game.
Oh, they're going to tie together.
There's an import save thing.
Oh, that's cool.
With the caveat that you can only import on the same platform. So like if you have a I think you can upload. Like if you played the PS4 Rising and you played the PS5 final game, you can upload the save to the PS5 version, but I think you can't go from PS5 to PS4.
Okay.
Like stuff like that.
That's still cool though.
But anyway,
that's a cool idea.
Like what you do in this will affect some things. I assume any character in this that has a big portrait that you get is going to be because that was always the thing in Suikoden was if they had a portrait, they were they were one of the 108 stars that you could recruit.
Yeah.
So I assume that's what's going to happen here too. The character design sort of gives it away. I was like, oh, that's an interesting looking character. I'm sure they are someone in the final game.
Now this game is on Game Pass.
Yeah.
How much is it selling for outright? Do you know?
I want to say it's 15.
Okay.
Which is about right.
How do you feel about it?
I really like it.
I'll say this: I had to play a lot more of this than I really wanted to get decent B-roll.
Yeah, it's a slow burn
because there's just a lot of talking.
A lot of talking,
and I was like, I can't show 20 minutes of B-roll of just text bubbles,
and a lot of going back to the same places, and a lot of the same. Yeah.
But I still didn't play that much. Like I spent like a couple hours getting the B-roll, but I felt like I really only played like 7 or 8 minutes of like combat.
Yeah, I played, I'm probably around 10, 11 hours at this point.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm maybe 2/3 done. Like, if you just were able to burn through the story like a linear thing, I think this game's about 4 hours. But you have to there's some grinding, there's a lot of side quest stuff. I will admit that the pacing of it, if you just look at how the story is told, is real slow. Because there's a lot of back and forth stuff going. Oh, we got to do this. Well, I need this thing first. Okay, go back here and get that. I'll bring it back. Okay, that's cool. I got to do that now. I'll do that, but then you got to talk to this person because they need a thing they're going to do a thing that I need this for that, and they got to go get more ore. Okay, so there's a lot of that. But if you could probably burn through the actual story if you didn't have to do all the fetch questing pretty fast. But there is the brilliance of this game is like it's one of those games where they throw a lot of side quests at you. And then you just happen to complete them all as you play.
Oh, good.
You know what I mean? Like you
just
can
accidentally.
Like you can load up with like 5 or 6 side quests before you go do the next main quest phase, but like you're gonna accidentally complete like all those side quests doing that main quest.
Okay,
section,
I like that.
Just because you're gathering resources all the time and constantly picking up stuff from enemies and like killing various enemies and so very, very rarely did I ever have to go out of my way to go complete a side quest and even when they give you something in an older area, there's usually like 4 other things to do there. And because this is it does take some cues from Metroid where you get like new abilities that open up new areas.
The map too, is like Metroid.
You have to so there's always tends to be a reason to go back to old areas to open up new passageways and stuff. And that's fun, and because like that, it's like, oh, how come I haven't gotten this item before? It's like, oh, because you didn't go in that area of that map because you couldn't break this wall down yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically what it is so you're CJ, which I think is a funny name for a character in a fantasy RPG. So CJ is a treasure hunter. She comes from a village where when you turn 15, you get kicked out of the village. Because you have to go on your quest to prove yourself and come back with a better treasure than your parents found. and her dad found this giant rune lens when he was her age. A rune lens is basically like a magic lens that focuses magic power. And so she basically has to find a rune lens bigger than the one her dad found, and she thinks she can find it in the area surrounding this town, which is New Neve or something like that. You know, it's spelled very fantasy. I don't know how you pronounce it.
N-I-V-A-E-A-E.
It's like Neveah or something. I'm just like, I don't know.
That's funny.
But she gets there, and it's kind of like a gold rush going on because there was an earthquake, and it opened up these mines with all these like rune things, and so there's sort of a lot of outsiders coming to like, you know, strike it rich and stuff. And she ends up getting there and helping some people out, and she meets the acting mayor, who turns out to be like a 15-year-old girl because it's anime. And there you can see there, like, eventually you'll be able to break that wall down.
Yeah.
And it turns out that like one of the way you can either buy a pass to go in the mines for $100,000, or you can go around and get stamps on a card to prove from everybody. Everybody in town has a stamp, a rubber stamp, and they can stamp your card if you help them. And if you have enough stamps, it proves that you're a helpful and worthwhile member of the community or something, basically. So that you can see that in the action scenes. You'll see a thing up in the top middle of the screen that has a bunch of blank spaces. That's your stamp card. And so every time you complete a quest, side quest or main quest, whatever, you get a stamp. And every 10 stamps, you get to turn those in for like resources that are hard to find otherwise. And you I think it's something like 140 stamps in the game or something. Like, it's a lot. Because the first time you're like, oh, you just need to fill this up. That's cool. Oh, silver. Oh, silver. Okay, now I'm gold. Okay, that's a lot more. And then like gold's not the end either. Like there's a lot going on. So as you can see, it's just a side-scrolling action game. You do get 2 other characters eventually. You get a kangaroo man who can store anything in his pouch, which is weird because male kangaroos don't have pouches.
Because he's a kangaroo man.
But he's like a badass mercenary with a giant sword, and he can knock things down and like, you know, fight through enemies' blocks and stuff. And then eventually the mayor girl joins you because she was born with magic power, which is very, very rare. Normally you need to use rune lenses and learn magic, but she was born with it. So she joins you as a magic character. And the way it works is you can switch between them at any time. So CJ's attacks I'm playing this on PS5, so CJ's attacks are on the square button. If you hit the triangle button, you'll switch to the kangaroo guy and keep pressing triangle, and he'll attack that way.
Okay.
And then if you hit circle, the mayor girl, the magic girl, joins in and fires like magic powers.
And the mechanic for that's kind of cool. It creates like almost this shadow version.
Yeah. Well, that you can switch at any time, but then you can do the link system where if you hit the button to another character in the middle of a combo, they'll join in and do like a little like
an extra
super combo thing,
yeah.
And then you can chain that. So you can chain that up to 3 times. And that's usually enough to kill just about anything. Like,
I found the combat in this to be surprisingly good.
Yeah, it's fun. Like there's a lot of, and like eventually you unlock as you upgrade, you know, gathering all the resources as you might expect. You can then upgrade your weapons and armor and abilities and stuff. And eventually you get like upward and downward attacks and, you know, longer combos, and like you can juggle stuff forever. Like you can, and like especially if you master switching between characters and like knowing when you can switch back and do like some I mean, you can do some crazy combos in this game. Like there's fighting game level stuff in this once all your abilities are unlocked. And upgrading armor tends to give you more traversal abilities, so you can use those to like get to hard to reach places or like get out of the way of things. Like there's a lot in here. Like this is an easy game. Like this is at no point have I ever felt particularly challenged by anything. But it's a lot of fun. And
what's up with the town building? Other than, you know, your save that carries over to the real game next year or whenever it comes out. What other purpose does the town building serve?
The more you upgrade everything, the more stuff they sell. And like the more upgrades you can get. So like you can only upgrade stuff to a certain level until you like upgrade the smithy some more, and now you can have access to the next 4 upgrades to your weapon or whatever.
Gotcha.
Also, that's Suikoden. Like Suikoden is always about building a home base.
Yeah.
So it's in line with that, right down to the level up thing that pops up every time you upgrade a building. So that's very satisfying.
Yeah,
I like that a lot. And it's very generous with fast travel. You can fast travel anywhere in a dungeon from the beginning. This is where you get back to the beginning of the dungeon. You dump off all your resources you've collected. You can only carry a certain number of resources depending on the size of your resource bag. I think you start with 50, and then that'll fill up pretty fast. And if you can't pick anything else up unless you drop something or go back to the beginning and deposit it in your storeroom, basically, which is automatic. But eventually you can upgrade. Like right now, I think I can carry 300. So it's like upgrading the resource bags is
most important.
Big deal. Big deal. Like weapons and resource bags. But those are all gated by when the side quest to upgrade those buildings, becomes available, which is all tied to the main quest.
Yeah.
So it is pretty linear, and you'll see...
The level design's not linear, though.
No, the level design's all over the place, and you'll see it's pretty cool how a lot of the stuff connects back up to itself once you open more areas, and there's some...
A lot like Metroid in that way. Yeah.
And so that's a lot. So I enjoy that a lot. It really feels good to play.
I agree.
I really wasn't expecting a whole lot out of this.
I was pleasantly surprised by it. I had no interest in playing it, and then I started playing it, and I was like, this ain't bad.
Yeah, it's fun. And I quickly settled it. I played it for a while with the sound on because I do think the music's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But after a while, especially because there's no voice dialogue really, I think outside of some of the earlier scenes that I remember, I just started putting on podcasts and playing this with the music low, and it's a lot of fun. A little mindless, gathering, going on grind runs to pick up stuff and stuff. But I enjoy, as you upgrade your gathering equipment, the things that you've been knocking over to get resources forever will start giving you new resources. So there's a reason to go back through things and do things again. And that's what a lot of the side quests are there to make you go back to these old areas and realize I can get this item from these trees now or whatever, which is pretty cool.
Congram is asking, how is the audio? Does it have the Suikoden OST vibes?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, if you just put this in my hands, I would definitely guess that people who were involved in Suikoden had a hand in this. Do
you think it's weird that they've made this game when there's this other game that everyone's really waiting for?
This is sort of like what Bloodstained did too.
Yeah.
I don't know what the logic is on that.
I don't either. Why do they do this?
I don't know. I backed the main game. I did not back. You had to put an.
But you got this free, right?
No, because you had to put an extra $7 in to get this, and I never did because I didn't trust it.
Maybe it's because it's a new team. They're like, let's build something small first.
Maybe
to figure out how we're going to build the bigger game.
This is a question that a lot of the backers have been asking. Anyway, even the people, a lot of people are like, "Oh, this is fun." There has been a problem where the Yeti, which is a company that does fulfillment stuff for Kickstarter, they didn't get a ton of people their codes for this.
Oh,
and it might be there's people that are saying it might be months or next year before some of these people get. Otherwise, they're like, "Well, go ahead and buy." No one knows.
How could that be a problem?
I don't have a lot of experience with the Yeti, but I've been reading on reactions to things where people are like, "Oh, I don't know why people use this company. I don't know why they always drop the ball on things like this. I don't know."
Yeah, weird.
So I don't know. I just went ahead and bought this on PS5 because it was $15, and my backed copy of the main game is PS5.
Mm-hmm.
So I figure I want the version that's going to import the save. So I just decided to buy it, and I don't regret that. I think $15 is pretty great for this. I'm super happy with that.
Yeah. Okay. And it's free on Game Pass, as we mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have Game Pass, I would recommend, because there's nothing else to play. Right
there's not much else to play, but also it's it's a real nice little Metroid-y little action combat. I don't really have anything bad to say about it as long as you're ready for the fact that you're going to be running through the same areas a lot to to do new side quests and to kind of go back and open new areas.
There's some backtracking.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of backtracking, but I think the combat's entertaining enough that I don't really mind.
Yeah.
And I don't mind fighting the bosses over and over because the bosses all respawns, and it's just satisfying to go back and that tree boss. I can kill that guy with one hit.
With one hit, yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, there's a charm to that for sure. So there you go. This Ayuden Chronicle. Is it Chronicle or Chronicles?
That's Chronicle, I think.
Okay, Rising. And again, it's the precursor to Ayuden Chronicle, which is coming next year, which is the spiritual successor to Suikoden, which we've been waiting way too long for.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's GameFace 300. We will take... Vincent saying he thinks it's a different team. That's even more interesting.
A different team from the... that would make sense. I just don't know...
But would it make sense?
I don't know what the...
Does it? You get some other team to make it?
Well, yeah, because you don't want to distract from making the main game.
I guess, but why even release this?
I don't know.
It's so weird. I think it is. Okay.
Maybe the idea was give them something to chew on while they're waiting for the final real game. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know why the Bloodstained game got made either.
That other spinoff. Yeah.
Maybe it's a Japanese thing. Maybe like is that like a conventional wisdom
how they
thing?
think they're supposed to do it? I don't know.
I'm not gonna argue. I like it.
Yeah.
And it like makes me feel better about the main game because I'm like, oh, this does feel like Suikoden. Like I see the Suikoden pedigree in this, and I feel better about because look, I love Suikoden. Like Suikoden 1 and 2 are I think 2 of the greatest JRPGs ever made.
Yeah.
And like I'm gonna have the same kind of trepidation about this as I will for like Mass Effect 4. I'm just like, look, I hope it's good, but I'm not gonna be shocked or disappointed horribly if it isn't. But like this has those vibes to it, and I'm pretty happy about that. Like this has definitely boosted my optimism towards the main game by how like on the nose this thing is. Really,
and it's competent.
Yeah,
well developed, which is a good sign, even if it is a different team. Okay, that's it for GameFace 300. I would love to take some questions from you guys, and I do want to take a minute to just thank you guys. A lot of you guys subscribe with Twitch Prime. I saw at the beginning. This whole show started differently than most GameFaces do, so there was no chance to kind of do the housekeeping at the beginning of the show, so I'm going to do it now. I'm also going to thank all you guys who subscribe with Twitch Prime. Pharaoh Doll, thank you for gifting all the subs. That's awesome. This is for Vidya Games. Thank you for Twitch Prime. JM Rain, thank you for gifting all the subs. I can't go back and thank all you guys, but you guys have been awesome this episode. I really, really appreciate it. Zed Saber plans for GameFace 400. Let's just try to get there first.
Let's not worry about 2024 just yet.
Yeah, 2025. I think it'll be longer than that till we would get to 400. So
it's 52 weeks in a year.
Yeah.
So somewhere in late 2024, probably.
Yeah. Well, if we can survive, I mean, that's really the X factor. If we'll be around to do 400.
The year 2525, if man is still alive. No one knows that.
Or it may be a case where like I start GameFace back up when I'm like 65.
I mean, look, there's nothing to say the show didn't really cost anything.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't cost you anything.
Space.
Yeah. But anyway.
Just don't run B-roll.
Yeah. That's not what costs money, unfortunately. Thank you guys. Thanks for everything through 300 episodes. I had originally planned on verbally naming all of the people who are pledging at the $30 or more per month. In fact, I'm just going to run that right now to thank you guys again. And I was going to read all these names out loud because you guys are the reason we got to 300. Like, all our patrons matter, obviously, but you guys are giving us $30 a month to make sure that this show keeps going, and I just want you to know how much I appreciate it. It's especially now, I know a lot of you guys are, everyone's feeling the pinch of inflation and everything. I'm sure a lot, and I've seen it. Like, we've lost so many patrons over the last 5 months, and every single one of them says, my financial situation changed, my financial situation changed, my financial situation changed. I know it's tough out there, so I just want to thank all you guys who pledge at that $30 or more per month. Like, you guys are the ones who are putting the food on the table, so to speak, with GameFace, and I really appreciate it. And I wish I hadn't run out of time, or I would have read all your names out loud, and that's what I wanted to do at the end of the show. A couple other housekeeping things before we go, and we are at the longest episode of GameFace ever at this point, I believe. We launched a new show. I mentioned it in the last episode of GameFace. I teased it. It is now launched to our patrons, and it'll be going up in the next day or two on our YouTube channel, and that show is called New Dimension. It is a show that chronicles some of the industry's biggest franchises and how they transition from 2D to 3D. The first episode was for Super Mario. We're already in production for the next one. It will be a monthly show. It's a big project, as you might expect. Vincent's been working on it. He's been doing a great job. Mike's Q's been doing the voice work, the biggest project he's ever done as far as voice work is concerned. It's a lot. The script is huge for this thing. But once a month, we'll be releasing a new episode. And all I want to say is, again, when it comes out on YouTube for free here in the next couple of days, can you guys please share the show and like the show on YouTube? We really need this show to hit. Like, we really need this show to hit. And just you guys going and liking the YouTube version, the public version of it, can send it up into the algorithm. And I do think that this is a show that has the capability to do big numbers. A podcast, there's tons of other podcasts. There's no other feature like this. There's no other feature on YouTube that chronicles franchises going from 2D to 3D. This is a brand new idea. So it has a chance, and we really need this, people. Like, we need this show to hit. So keep an eye on our Twitter feed. We're at Sifted Games on Twitter if you're not following us already. We will obviously tweet whenever the show goes live on YouTube. Please go and like the show. Click that thumbs up. It can make a huge difference for us. And if you're not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, do that as well. But Vincent did a great job on it. Mike's Q did a great job on it. The first episode, it got unanimous praise from our patrons and our subscribers on Sifted and on our Patreon. I really think it has a chance to do something special, but we need you guys to help us do that. So I'd really appreciate any help. You can give New Dimension 2D to 3D. Good Morning Gaming has gone on hiatus. If you listen to the last episode of Good Morning Gaming, you know why. We just aren't making any money. And I was running myself ragged doing the show, and all that's happened since I've launched the show is the Patreon has gone down drastically. And honestly, like as I mentioned in a prior show, I'm just not making ends meet anymore. So I'm having to spend the time that I was spending on that show trying to make money in other ways. Like I can't make a living off Sifted anymore. So I have to like do some freelance work or find some other gigs to pay my bills. So I just can't do it anymore. Now, if our Patreon goes back up and it does get above that $4,000 mark, then I can consider doing it again. But that was the condition of the show anyway, was it needs to be at 4,000. I kept doing the show for months, even though it was well below that, hoping the show could bring it back up. It wasn't working. So I got to make a living, folks. That's all there is to it. None of this is free, and my bills aren't free either. So that is on hiatus, and maybe our Patreon goes up eventually and I can get back to it. I really love doing the show. It's a bummer that I had to put it on hiatus. And then finally, Ask Shane Anything is changing back to the way it was before. It is going to be kind of like Pactor Factor in that we put out a call out for questions. In fact, there's a call out for questions right now. You can find it on the homepage at sifted.net or on our Patreon. And I'll just answer those questions kind of in a canned way, the way Pactor Factor does them. The last Ask Shane Anything we tried to do as a live stream, no one showed up. Not a single person. I sat there until 12:20. Nobody showed up. And I was like, okay, you have spoken. So you guys don't want to do it. You don't want to do the podcast thing.
That's a different show called Ask Shane Nothing.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was that day. And it did suck because I had set aside time on my Saturday to do the show, and like nobody bothered to show up. My wife had wanted me to go out with her that day, and I'm like, I have to do this show, and she got pissed off at me, and then nobody showed up for it. So Ask Shane Anything is going back to the old way of doing things. Go ask a question right now. It's up at sifted.net. And then it'll be, the finished product will be more like Pactor Factor. And honestly, that's the way we did like the first 30 episodes of Ask Shane Anything, or maybe more actually. So anyway, that's all the housekeeping. Again, thanks to everybody who has supported GameFace from that day one that we saw in that montage. And it is interesting. I was going through all the old episodes, and it's a little sad to see people who have left. Because those first 20 episodes of GameFace, like they were getting 150, 200 likes on Sifted, and like literally like 150 comments. Mm-hmm. And now to go and look at those comment sections, and you can see the people who no longer subscribe because now they're basic. And to see like some of those people that have disappeared were like great community members who had like their on-site level was like 20 some. And I'm like, what happened that you decided to leave? You know, it's anyway. Welcome to my life. But I do appreciate everyone who has stuck around this whole time, and I do appreciate those people as well, because without them, we never would have got on our feet and had this show going. So I appreciate all of it. You guys are awesome. Thank you for your support. Thanks for sticking around and watching this whole damn thing, because we're going on like 3.5 hours at this point. You guys are warriors and soldiers. We really appreciate it. We'll see you next Tuesday. GameFace is up. Wait a minute. I have the clip wrong.
Hello.
Yep. The longest, actually, I did like GameFace is up and out like 10 times on the intro. So you got your quota already. But once again, GameFace is up and out.